Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our VOC meeting. I'm calling to order the regular session meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Ms. Jacobs, roll call, please.
Mayor LaHousas,
Here.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Here.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Here.
Commissioner Donovan,
Here.
Commissioner Vaticiotis.
Here.
Tonight's invocation will be given by the City Attorney, following with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, we pray this evening for the members of our armed forces serving in Afghanistan. We ask for their safety and that they are returned to their homes and loved ones as soon as their duties permit. Give comfort to their families and friends in their absence and help us remember the sacrifices that they are making. This we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I would like to remind to everyone that in order to be productive, to have productive meeting and with professionalism based on the city code, the public comments must be directed only to the chair of the meeting in a professional manner, with respect, without a personal attacks, and I will thank you for your cooperation. We are now going to the public comments of the items will not be discussed this evening. If you have any comments, please come forward, state your name and your address for the record. You'll be given 4 minutes.
Do we leave this on or we take it off? Do we leave the mask on or take it off?
It's up to you.
Hello, thank you for hearing me today. I know you have a long list of things on the docket today, and I wanted to kind of get this out of the way at the beginning. We feel that the ordinance, again,
Excuse me, would you please state your name and your address for the
my
record?
apologies.
Thank
My
you.
name's Elijah Durham. I live at 1038 Graywood Avenue in Tarpon Springs. I'm also the owner or co-owner of Soul Burger Food Truck. So my comments tonight will be addressed to the ordinance having to do with that. Anything else before I begin?
No, sir. Go ahead
Thank
and
you.
start. Thank you.
We feel that the ordinance can be amended, edited, or rewritten to allow food trucks to operate within the current map, then get a possible annual, semi-annual permit through the business or through the city to be able to do businesses compliant with all MFTV, hot dog cart, DBPR standards and requirements on private property, breweries, wineries, distilleries, charities, and other community organizations. We will be forming a food truck committee through the Chamber of Commerce. Our intent with this is to preserve the culture of our town, the heritage of our town. It is not to come in and displace any other business. We truly believe that food trucks in general can bring business to the area and help support local businesses as well. The point of this food truck committee is to discuss reasonable food truck zoning for the city of Tarpon Springs. It is to be inclusive of food truck owners, local restaurant owners, owners of breweries, wineries, distilleries. We're interested in hearing from anyone else that has a vested interest in the food truck ordinance. There are certain things that we would like to talk about and just kind of give examples of some of the things that we would like to discuss in the future for this ordinance. Nobody that I spoke to as far as the food trucks wants to be on the docks or in the town center. And we think we can all agree that having an abundance of food trucks out there, we certainly agree would not behoove preserving the culture of our town here. So we are perfectly amenable to trying to create some areas in the CRA district, some more areas in the residential districts where we are able to operate on private property through contracts with written permission. And we are also amenable to other things with the city. If we wanted to develop a new system, maybe kind of a system on how we can regulate food trucks in a better manner and ensure that we don't have you have nice restaurants, you have bad restaurants, you have great food trucks and you have roach coaches. I don't want to be associated with anything like that. My food truck, I would like to think, is above board and more than above board. So, I apologize. I have many talents. Public speaking may not be one of them. Some of the other things would be that you have to be able to provide proper documentation of where you dump your gray water, where you dump your fryer oil. You can't just arbitrarily do business in a city. We certainly understand that. If you have certain generators, decibel levels, or you have to be plugged into a certain power source, written approval to operate on any fee, a reasonable fee, such as other contractors may do. We are also amenable to kind of hearing concerns. If there's any concerns, I've been doing this. I've been a professional chef for 21 years, an executive chef for over 15, going on 16, and I have a lot of knowledge. I've built a total of 13 restaurants in my career, and I don't come in this with just a little bit of knowledge. I would love to help be a part of a solution. And our overall goal is to be good stewards of our community. So moving forward, this is a formal comment requesting a revote or a revisit of the food truck ordinance. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is
I
Karen
still
Gallagher.
recognize you.
Oh, I know. Well, you're a little taller than I am and put the microphone a little high, so I
Thank
hope you
you.
can hear me. I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I would also like to thank you all for your service.
Can I
to
interrupt you? Please
Yes.
state your name and address.
I'm
for the
sorry,
record, even
Karen
though that I know
Gallagher.
you very
Yeah.
well.
Karen Gallagher, 33 Central Court.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'd like to first thank you for allowing me to speak today, as well as for your services to the city and the residents of Tarpon Springs. This was originally a letter that I was going to send, and by midway through, you may understand why I decided not to send it, but to come out here and read it. So my family has had the opportunity to participate in or observe many of the wonderful events the city has sponsored over the past 9 years, including but not limited to the Holiday Boat Parade. For one person's count, there were upwards of 50 boats that participated in last year's event, which was a success for sure. Approximately an hour and a half after the boats exited Spring Bayou, my family walked along the bayou as we headed home from downtown. When we neared the seawall along North Spring Boulevard near the Reed Canal Street intersection, we looked into the water and found candy canes lining the perimeter along the seawall and throughout the bayou. My daughter laid down on the sidewalk, stretched out as far as she could, reached into the water to collect as much of the plastic wrapped candy as she could retrieve. Please note, she did not do this because she is deprived of candy. She does have a job and certainly can buy her own. In that short distance of about 20 yards, she was able to fill the large Solo cup she'd picked up just moments before, and she filled it with wrapped mini candy canes and one Tootsie Roll. This was just what she could reach, and in just that short distance. We did see additional trash, but it was out of reach. According to Florida Statute 403.413 Florida Litter Law, littering is prohibited in or on any freshwater lake, river, canal, or stream or tidal or coastal water of the state, including canals. When any litter is thrown or discarded from a boat, the operator or owner of the boat, or both, shall be deemed in violation of the section. Section 6A penalties enforcement reads, any person who dumps litter in violation of subsection 4 in an amount not exceeding 15 pounds in weight or 27 cubic feet in volume and not for commercial purposes commits a non-criminal infraction punishable by a civil penalty of $150. It then goes on to state that the court may require the violator to pick up litter or perform other labor. What was meant to be a fun gesture and a way to interact with the spectators, it ended up leaving trash floating in our waters. Perhaps educating participants and assessing a fine for violators who do not comply will ensure it is not repeated in years to come. Along the same lines regarding Spring Bayou, several years ago, my then teenage daughter wrote a letter to the mayor, who was serving at the time, regarding boats occupying the bayou near the Spring Head during the Christmas boat parade and the Epiphany celebration, where there is a buoy that says no motorized boats in that area. Her concern was for the manatee and the other aquatic animals who migrate in the Spring Head area to keep warm when the water temperatures dip. Not only did she identify a problem, she also offered in her letter to the mayor an alternate solution, such as having the boats in the boat parade turn around before entering that section. And she also suggested that during Epiphany, only human-powered vessels be allowed to enter the restricted area during the Epiphany celebration. And I understand this year was different and no boats, kayaks or anything were allowed in there. The letter she received in response from the mayor was disheartening. It merely indicated that there's a special permit or ordinance that allows motorized boats to be in that area during these events. My response to that is just because we can doesn't mean we should. Let's look at the difference between intent versus impact. I do not believe for a minute that the intent of any of our residents, business owners, religious institutions, or city officials is to harm our city's valuable assets or marine life. However, I do think there needs to be a better understanding of the impact of what some of our activities and actions have on our community. With 46 miles of coastline and 56% of the fish land in Pinellas County coming from Tarpon Springs, we have a lot to offer, but we also have a lot to lose. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is David Happy. I live at 903 Cypress Cove Way over by East Lake High School. First, thank you for hearing me tonight. I'm remiss in having not been down to this beautiful building before. And unbeknownst to me, I'm here to speak on food trucks. Accidental activist. I'm here today on behalf of a community watchdog organization called Pinellas Watch. Pinellas Watch is now some 1,500 members strong and growing. And we have questions regarding the prohibition of food trucks operating in certain areas of Tarpon Springs. I don't own a food truck, and I don't have any friends or family that own a food truck. I don't have a restaurant in Tarpon, and I don't have any friends or family that have a restaurant in Tarpon. I'm truly just here as a Tarpon resident, but representing the Pinellas Watch Group. And I hope that each of you that voted here, if you picked winners and losers in this food truck ordinance, I hope you can say the same thing, that you don't have any friends or family members that have other interests in Tarpon Springs that would be relative to the food truck ordinance that you passed. I recently tried to, the reason I'm here today to speak to you is I recently rented out a facility here in Tarpon Springs from a business. And I tried to get a food truck to come and participate in our socially distanced event that we had planned. Wanting to keep it local, I reached out to local food trucks for them to provide food for us, and they couldn't. You've decided for some reason to prohibit a business from providing a service to me, your resident, through another private party, through another private business. But not all businesses, if I'm understanding correctly, just certain businesses. Let me see if I understand. If I'm Rusty Bellies, and I have a food truck, I can still operate. But if I'm not Rusty Bellies or one of our established businesses, you've decided that those small businesses, man, this has been a tough year for all these small businesses. And I'm not here advocating for any one business, although I'd like to look at some of them. Heavenly Puffs got some national media attention during the Super Bowl. I don't know if you all saw that. Tarpon Springs-based residents, Tarpon Springs-based business that can't operate their food truck in Tarpon, they're getting national attention. They're down in Tampa with their great product, but we can't have it here for a special event outside of the restrictions that you've put in, seemingly to protect some type of interest beyond just that food truck owner. You've decided that I can't support that business here within Tarpon Springs. The voters of Tarpon Springs didn't elect you guys to pick winners and losers in business. Meanwhile, Dunedin has done the exact opposite of what we've done here in Tarpon, and they welcome all these businesses in, and Dunedin is awesome. We'll go to Dunedin to support these same businesses we'd love to be supporting here in Tarpon Springs. What you've done here might be untenable. That's not my fight to fight. If I owned a business truck, I'd probably be having a different conversation with the city. But on behalf of my fellow Tarpon Springs residents, the 1,500 members of Pinellas Watch that are now watching the situation, and all of the small businesses you have prohibited from operating in this free and fair market system that we should have, I'd ask you to overturn this nonsense and let the market decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Chris Roboski, 1602 Gulf Beach Boulevard, Tarpon Springs, 34689. So I thought it was apropos that the previous speaker said that she chose to come here and speak versus send in a letter, as the Commission of Tarpon Springs now gets to arbitrarily choose whether or not they're going to read those. may not be aware, but at the January 12th, I believe it was Tuesday, 12th meeting, they waited till the very end of that meeting when nobody could get up and speak against what they were choosing to vote against. They chose to vote against reading hundreds of emails of people in opposition to the Anclote Harbor project. Now, 3 commissioners voted against that. Would have been enough to chill the speech, the free speech of our citizens, except one of them voted illegally. He was supposed to be recused on that vote. So it failed. That vote failed. And the funny thing was, the clerk had already read all of those hundreds of emails into a recording device so they could be played at the meeting. So when there's a project that some commissioners want to go through, they don't want anybody to know that there's hundreds of opposition to it. They want nobody to know. And they made it clear that night. They said as much. Now, how can you arbitrarily just choose which projects, winners or losers, right? They're just choosing which projects we get to speak against and which ones we don't get to know if anybody spoke against. What are you doing? You got caught and you ended up having to play them anyway. But then I've heard from at least 50 other people that they sent in some emails that didn't get read into the record. Now, why is that? That doesn't seem right. You extended the meeting for Armstrong and this Texas group, the Morgan group, that want to build there. But you didn't extend that courtesy to the citizens. So all these other people that called and tried to get in and got bumped off on the call, and all these people that emailed after the fact, they didn't get hurt? Really? That testimony didn't get considered during a quasi-judicial hearing? I mean, that project's not even going to get built. And you guys try to ramrod it through this dangerous project, cost people lives if it ever got built. We're not going to let it happen. We're going to educate this city so that the sitting commissioners that voted against the voice of the people will no longer be sitting. They won't be elected to anything because this will follow you to whatever seat you try to run for, county, state, federal. Everybody's going to know because we'll never, ever let it go. We will educate everyone that would ever consider voting for you, for no matter what it is, dog catcher to President of the United States. They will know that you didn't want to hear from the people. And they will know that you tried to push this project through during a pandemic, right through the holidays, back-to-back meetings. We've done it before. We cleaned house in here the first time the city tried to do that for the Walmart, and we're going to do it again. This project will not get built, and the people will be held responsible. They will be held responsible, and everybody will be consistently reminded of the evil things that were done here. It was wrong. It's not democratic. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Peter Delacus, 514 Ashland Avenue. Before I get to my reading, I would just like to augment what Mr. Hrabowski said. When y'all did try to take that vote, it was in board comments. It wasn't something on the agenda that you could legally vote on. And thank you, Karen, for pointing out our environmental issues. They go beyond the Anclote Harbors project. Now, for your reading tonight, Isaiah 5, 8 through 29. I will sing to the one I love, a song about his vineyard. My loved one had a vineyard on a fertile hillside. He dug it up and cleared it of stones and planted it with the choicest vines. He built a watchtower on it and cut out a wine press as well. Then he looked for a crop of good grapes, but it yielded only bad fruit. Now, you dwellers in Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more could have been done for my vineyard that I have done for it? When I looked for good grapes, why did it yield only bad? Now, I will tell you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. I will take away its hedge and it will be destroyed. I will break down its wall and it will be trampled. I will make it a wasteland, neither pruned nor cultivated, and briars and thorns will grow there. I will command the clouds not to rain on it. The vineyard of the Lord Almighty is the home of Israel, and the men of Judah are the garden of his delight. And he looked for justice, but saw bloodshed, for righteousness, but heard cries of distress. Woe to you who add house to house and join field to field, till no space is left, and you live alone in the land. The Lord Almighty has declared in my hearing, surely the great homes will become desolate, the fine mansions left without occupants. A 10-acre vineyard will produce only a bath of wine, a homer of seed only an ephah of grain. Woe to those who rise early in the morning to run after their drinks, who stay up late at night till they are inflamed with wine. They have harps and lyres at their banquets, tambourines and flutes and wine, but they have no regard for the deeds of the Lord, no respect for the work of his hands. Therefore, my people will go into exile for lack of understanding. Their men of rank will die of hunger, and their masses will be parched with thirst. Therefore, the engrave enlarges his appetite and opens its mouth without limit. And into it will descend their nobles and masses, with all their brawlers and revelers. Both low and high will be humbled, and the eyes of the arrogant will be brought low. But the Lord Almighty will be exalted by his justice, and the holy God will show himself holy by his righteousness. Then sheep will graze as in their own pasture. Lambs will be fed among the ruins of the rich. Woe to those who draw sin along with cords of deceit, and wickedness as with cart ropes. To those who say, let God hurry, let him hasten his work so we may see it. Let it approach. Let the plan of the Holy One of Israel come so we may know it. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and champions at mixing drinks, who acquit the guilty for a bribe but deny justice to the innocent. Ms. Lori Chirakos is willing to donate her minutes to me. Therefore, woe to those who are heroes of drinking wine and champions at mixing drinks, who acquit the guilty for a bribe, but deny justice to the innocent. Therefore, as tongues of fire lick up straw, and as dry grass sinks down in the flame, so their roots will decay, and their flowers blow away like dust. For they have rejected the law of the Lord Almighty, and spurned the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore, the Lord's anger burns against his people. His hands raised, and he strikes them down. The mountains shake, and the dead bodies are like refuse in the streets. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away. His hand is still upraised. He lifts up a banner for the distant nations. He whistles for those at the ends of the earth. Here they come, swiftly and speedily. Not one of them grows tired or stumbles. Not one slumbers or sleeps. Not a belt is loosened at the weight. Not a sandal thong is broken. Their arrows are sharp. All their bows are strung. Their horses' hoofs seem like flint. Their chariot wheels like a whirlwind. Their roar is like that of the lion. They roar like young lions. They growl as they seize their prey and carry it off with no one to rescue. And that day they will roar over it like the roaring of the sea. And if one looks at the land, he will see darkness and distress. Even the light will be darkened by the clouds. Come March, many of you will see your grave. And we are the lions that are coming for you. God bless us all. Amen.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Do we have anybody else wishing to speak?
Hi, my name is Ashley Durham. I live at 1038 Graywood Avenue. While my husband is great at talking about all the food regulations, I get the privilege of booking our schedule. And I think it's very, very, very important as a former teacher to just make it very crystal clear that I can go serve a Palm Harbor elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. All of these teachers that are working tirelessly, I can go serve an entire school in 2 hours, and they deserve it. But I can't serve a single school in Tarpon Springs because of your ordinance. I can't serve the Shepherd Center that wants me to, and I can't serve many, many other people that want us to because of this ordinance. This isn't about just restaurants, guys. This is about more than that. We need to come to the table. We need to fix this so I can, as a former teacher, just go serve those people. Let's just start there. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other, anybody else wishing to speak? We hear none. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
We've
For
received
public
no
comments.
emails.
Huh?
We've received no emails.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, do we have anyone on Zoom that wishing to speak?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak for public comment, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. We do have a raised hand, so I'll allow this one in.
What are you doing, Peter? Peter, what are you doing? Mayor, this is a distraction. Can we address this, please?
Let's let freedom of speech ring and let's let people be. This is an auditorium. This is a public setting. So let's let people be. Let's.
Excuse me, state your name and your address for the record.
Oh, Panayotis Koulias, 595 Peninsula Avenue. My mother, Maria Koulias, will be donating 2 minutes of her time for me to be speaking.
We need to identify your mother as well.
Mr. Jump, can you please let her in?
Ms. Koulias, if you can state your name and address for the record.
Maria Koulias, 595 Peninsula Avenue, Tarpon Springs, Florida.
Mayor, if I could interrupt, Mayor.
Yes.
We've got an individual back here. He's rather distracting. Part of your guidelines that was brought up and by the city attorney as to distractions shouldn't be made in the auditorium. I don't know what we could do with this, but I think we could politely ask this individual to stop. I brought it up a few minutes ago. He's still waving his feathers around. It's a distraction, so I'm not sure what we can do in this situation.
That is not a distraction, guys. Let's grow up here. You guys are commissioners of one of the historic cities. Let's stop this nonsense.
Mr. Delagos, would you please stop? He did. Thank you. Continue.
Annie Samarkis will be donating her time for me to be speaking as well. So I will begin. I have this email that I emailed the board to you all on February 4th. The subject title is Andriotis, Terrapini Collusion in Commissioner Seat number 4. Good morning, board. I also want to say hello to David Banter and George Andriotis because they will be reading this email shortly since they've announced. After my recent Facebook post about the real estate consortium in Tarpon Springs, many Tarponites have questions and concerns about this disrespectful move that was performed on the citizens of Tarpon Springs. George has been very vocal regarding national politics on Facebook, but has since gone silent, being called out publicly regarding this political stunt. We understand the relationship between Banter Terrapini and Associates and George Andriotis and how this real estate consortium plans to overrun City Hall with a majority vote. I, along with many Tarponites, find it disturbing and act like this was played out without Townsend Terrapini announcing he will not run again. The real question is Townsend going to run again against George Andriotis, or do they plan to deceive us? They've done a lot of business over the past couple of years, and George's failed first performance on planning and zoning will not go unnoticed. We would like an answer from both George and Townsend on their plans. They both colluded together to deceive the citizens of Tarpon Springs. I don't believe in coincidences, and I find it encouraging in my stance and opinion when I saw George Andriotis' truck at Banther Terrapini Associates office with the two of them the day after the January 26th, 2021 BOC meeting. I mean, I was literally walking to Goodyear to pick up my car. And here I am when I see all their trucks together on the corner. I literally said to myself, Lord, you never let me down. You never do. So I pulled out my phone out in the middle of the street and I took pictures of it because I wanted to be able to connect the dots. And I don't want you guys saying that would never happened. So as I was walking away, I get a text message from David Banther, which we have a good relationship when we talk privately. He says, next time, just come on in. You don't need to be taking pictures out in the road. And I reply back saying, I don't believe in coincidences. So whatever you guys are planning, it needs to come to light, and it will come to light. Go read Luke verse 8:16, and that will explain it all. Now I'm going back to my email. Mr. Trask will have to advise if Sunshine Law was violated between the city commissioner and a candidate running for the same seat with the exact same views. This move is no different from insider trading, and to me is unethical unless we all know of both their plans because it's only right. I once again asked George Andriotis and Townsend to come out clean with their colluded political plans and have Townsend announce by Tuesday he will not be running again. I would like George Andriotis to publicly speak on this issue as well. This issue will not go away, and I plan on focusing half my public comments on the presentation regarding at the next meeting. To think the Terrapanis would find another puppet or figurehead is embarrassing to Tarpon politics, and everything we've been fighting for. This issue on collusion of seat 4 by Andriotis and Terrapini will not go away until it's publicly addressed by the two men themselves. I'm asking George to address this via Facebook before the Tuesday meeting and Townsend to announce he won't be running again in this commissioner comments portion at the end of this Tuesday's BOC meeting. You know, you all try to pull one of the oldest plays in the political book, try to get somebody else, monopolize a seat. I mean, what an embarrassment. When this families and these groups of people didn't get the right mayor and they ran another Greek against them to make it a third race. Go look at the history of Tarpon Springs. And I want to say, where's Chief Koshin? You know, I hope he's looking for his new job in March because it won't be here in Tarpon Springs. And this whole stuff about freedom of speech being violated, from the signs to the feathers being waved around, is an embarrassment on you guys. You guys sit there and do all this backdoor dealing, but you can't handle some tough criticism. And just because the attorney wanted to sit there and lie and he found it very, very disturbing, or he was scared because he couldn't see behind the poster, well, tough luck. This is a public setting. We have a right to put posters up. We have a right to do whatever we want, all within the lines of freedom of speech. And just like the mayor keeps covering up everybody, the uncovering is going to happen. Now, I'm just freestyling over here, and let's go back to this ordinance with the trucks and the food trucks. Why don't you all come up with a plan for a 30 or 60-day rule to allow them to drive their trucks wherever needed and see what happens? Just give it a chance. You know, today marks the 1-year anniversary where we raised awareness about the dark clouds over City Hall, and we haven't stopped fighting since. I told you, Mayor, when we had our conversation at Total Fitness after the November 14, 2017 meeting, I was coming back, but I don't think you expected this. I didn't expect you to protect your puppet masters this much either. You know, the commissioner's father and our city manager constantly pulling your strings. We citizens are still waiting for an apology for your international COVID cover-up. Mayor, as we peel back the layers of corruption, I knew I couldn't turn my back on the city and let this continue to happen to Tarponites. So, we talk about accomplishments, and these are just very little. We got the city manager's transcripts in the system. And to think, we let somebody who's running a $60 million city run the city and we never check their transcripts. I promise you that won't ever happen again. And I'm still waiting for the minutes to be verified so I can speak on his unofficial transcripts, which look fake to me, that were submitted by Michelle Manusos. Now, we finally found out how much his salary is, and the double dipping our city manager is not an emergency for. Mr. Young is an emergency, and that's why he's going to be our next chief. Without him, our police department will topple. So Mr. Young is an emergency, and he will be our next chief. We forced City Hall to do annual reviews on the city manager, and we found out our city manager never did his annual reviews on department heads. We also confirmed the dark rumors about Chief Koshin and LaCour's plan to dictate the plans of the city manager position. We know that's not happening. And for the record, when I asked for complaint history regarding Chief Koshin, the city clerk replied back saying there weren't any. But in the personnel files that I requested and I received, I did find these one-page documents that talk about some type of a complaint, but there's no details regarding them. So I will have to do another public records request and ask for the internal affairs coffers that were submitted by citizens regarding Chief Koshin. That way I can get the right documents. I mean, Tarponites, you have to word your public records to the T to get exactly what you want, but don't worry, we're gonna get there. We are gonna get there. Now, let's see how much time I have left. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Jeff, do you have anybody else on Zoom who would like to speak?
If anyone else would like to speak on on public comment, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. We are now going to the consent agenda. Number 1 is the attorney fees, Traska Dinold invoice, February 3rd, 2021. Number 2 is the award file number 22-10095 CAM Park and Playground Equipment, Manatee County School District bid number 210053 MR. Number 4 is the award bid number 210076 BJJ Golf Course Drainage Improvements. Number 4 is the award file number 210103 CJL Sanitary Sewer Manhole and Lift Station Wet Well Rehabilitation utilizing the City of Kesselberry Contract RFP 2019-0467. Number 5 is to ratify an increase to file number 190069 CCM Tires and Related Services utilizing the Florida Sheriff's Association bid number 19 TRS 21.0. Number 6 is renew file number 170090 CRS Laboratory Testing Services through the City of Plant City RFP 1602 QUOSS. Any of the items that you'd like to pull?
2 and
Yes.
3.
Which one?
2 and 3.
Yes. Thank you. 2 and 3?
Yes.
Anything else? Just 2 for me, just 2. Okay, I need a motion to approve items 1, 4, 5, and 6.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item or these items?
Peter Lacus, 514 Ashland Avenue. It's not that I have a specific comment on any particular item, but again, I will bring forth the fact that we still do not have a backup in the hall for us to see what you're voting on. It's not a hard issue to put a hand sanitizer there so people can clean their hands, go through the backup to see what you're voting on and what information we're needing to know about. So we can logically and correctly speak about any of these issues. You're negligent in educating the public on what you're doing. And what Panayoti referred to kind of goes with this, because he didn't have a Bible to read. Luke 8:16. No
Mr.
one lights a
Delacus,
lamp
Mr.
and hides
Delacus,
it in the
Mr.
jar
G-
or puts
Mr.
it under a bed. Instead, he puts it on a stand so those that come can see in the light.
Mr. Delacus.
For there is nothing hidden
Mr.
that will not be
Delacus, excuse me,
disclosed, and
Mr.
nothing
Delacus.
concealed that will not be known
Delacus,
or brought
please
out
look-
into the open.
Let me
This
know-
is relative to what I'm speaking about.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is,
Stay
sir.
to this, stay to those items that we talked
The
about.
item-
Item
It has to
1,
do with the
4,
lack
5,
of
and 6.
information provided to us so we can speak.
Please stick
The
to the
public
subject.
of
will you?
information. That is the point.
Thank you so much. Are there any other public comments on the items 1, 4, 5, and 6? Here none. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No email on those items.
Mr. Jump, do we have any attendees wishing to speak on these items 1, 4, 5, and 6?
If anyone would like to speak on these items, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Okay, thank you. We are now going to the item number 2. This is the award file number 22-10095, Park and Playground Equipment, Manatee School County School District number 210053. We have 2 requests on that. Do you want to start? Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This is something we budgeted for. These are the sail shades that are going to go above bleachers at a couple of our parks where a lot of our youth sports programs use it. It's going to help the parents. It's going to help them be able to hold more tournaments. I'm really excited that this is moving forward. I want to thank staff for seeing it through. And I'm also glad that a tarpon company won the bid on this. My only question on this, and maybe our city manager can answer this, is just when will the sunshades be installed?
Approximately 6 to 8 weeks they take to be made and come in. And of course, this company is going to be installing them. So the estimate is between 6 and 8 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
It was also pulled by Commissioner Vaticiotis.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. LaCourse, are these replacements or we're not adding anything new? These are just replacements of existing shades?
I believe some of them are areas that they requested that there weren't shades where the sun was.
So a couple of them are new?
Yes.
Okay. We had an email some time ago, actually, it was in the form of a concern for safety. I guess one of the parents' children scalded their bottom on the swing set at Sunset Beach. Would it be possible to, since this is a county or, a contract that we could add to, could we add, if it's feasible, a sunshade for the swing set at Sunset Beach? Do you recall that? That
Yeah,
happened
I
this
mean, we
past
could always
summer?
look at utilizing the contract for something else if the board so wishes to look at.
Well, that's what, if we could add one more shade cover for the purpose of Sunset Beach swing set, if the city manager and the building director, I know he's here, seems that it's feasible from a wind loading perspective, I'd like for that to be considered this evening. I'm not sure how many of these are new, but I don't think one more would hurt in that regard.
Commissioner Terrapini, you had a question on that?
I didn't have a question. I was just going to also highlight that the company that we're awarding the bid to is from Tarpon Springs.
Okay.
And I'll just say the same thing about number 3 too, when you get to it. It's also a Tarpon Springs company.
Vice Mayor had a comment.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. I've had a lot of individuals reach out to me about the Sisler Field and having lack of shade out there. So I'm encouraged that this is going to be at Sisler Field, and I think Commissioner Donovan, the other part's going to the youth soccer fields and football fields. So I appreciate you spearheading this one and pushing it forward. I do think it's important because obviously it's hot out there, and I think it's going to be welcomed with wide open arms with all the spectators in those areas. Pertaining to Sunset Beach, I think if the city manager could come back with a quote, and we could look at this budget season coming up, if there's an opportunity to address any of the parks as a whole. I visit the Sunset Beach park often. There's a lot of trees in the area. So I know that would be kind of a difficult spot without actually looking at it further and kind of investigating into it.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, just to add on to Commissioner Vaticiotis' comments, I'd be happy to look at a quote for any sunshade for any of our parks, really. I mean, it sounds a little bit, not a priority right now, but when it's 100 degrees in July, it's a big deal for families trying to get out there.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have a shade there, but I'd like to ask Mr. Licorice, do we have funding for it?
Well, we'll look at it and get a price. We need to look at it, get a price for it, and then I'm going to bring it back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mayor, it wouldn't be part of this motion. It would be
No,
something
when
in
you
the
say we're
future.
going to get a price on it, we'll bring it back to us.
In how long?
Probably should be pretty fast. I'd call the company and find out. I'm sure they'll go out and measure pretty fast. So within the next 2 meetings, I'm sure we'll have something, a price and stuff to be back and the funding source for you to approve.
Okay, so the first meeting in March would be okay?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, at least your comments, and we could maybe make an approval at that time. I think it's just a simple add-on. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'll note that.
Let's discuss item number 3 as well, which is the award bid 21076 golf course drainage improvements. Who pulled that? Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm always happy to help our golf course any way we can. I was just curious as to what was going to happen to the money left over, because I was pleasantly surprised it came in under budget. I think there's about 60 grand left. Is that just going to go back into the fund, or?
Yes, that will remain in the sewer collection fund for another future project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I also like to say that it's very important that we complete this project because the 15-inch metal pipe that we have now there is rusted and it's not operating. So I think this is good to replace it with a big 30-inch pipe where you can actually drain the water from there. That's it. I like the comment you made that there's a local company that is going to do it.
Both of them.
Good. Commissioner Ticures, do you have a comment on that?
No, I looked at it.
Okay.
At first I had some question. I think the drainage pipe by itself is going to be about $50,000, which is 5,000 linear feet of 30-inch line is pretty long. That's over a mile's worth of drainage line. At that price, I think is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I think these are the same company that's going to be doing the Seabreeze Drive sewer, so they're familiar with the city, and we've worked with them in the past, I believe, as well. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item? Here none. Now, Ms. Jacobs said we received any emails on items 2 and 3.
We've received no emails.
Thank you, Mr. Jump. Do we have anybody online wishing to speak on items 2 and 3?
If anyone would like to speak on these items, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes. We now go into the special consent agenda, which is item number 7. This is the award bid number 210076, 78 BJJ Seabreeze Drive sanitary sewer improvements. Staff report.
Mr. Robertson, make the report.
Thank you. I'm Bob Robertson, Project Administration Department Director, and also on the Zoom is Paul Smith, Public Services Director. For this item, we're requesting BOC approval of a construction contract for a project on Seabreeze Drive. The scope of this Public Services Department project is the installation of a new sanitary sewer system consisting of a new gravity sewer main, a new lift station, and a new force main. This project will enable residents to switch from septic tanks in this environmentally sensitive area to city sewer. Some other highlights of the project, based on input that we got from the public, we worked with our design engineer to include an add-on for reclaimed water piping and service lines for the project area. It was included as an additive alternate to the bid, and the price came in very close to our total budget, within about $13,000. So we're recommending approval of the project with the additive alternate reclaimed water included. Also, the project will include installation of 10 new potable water service lines for currently undeveloped properties. The idea there is that we didn't want to have to dig up anything because we're going to be putting in new pavement. If and when those properties ever were to be developed, the water service would be readily available. And speaking of new pavement, the project will include roadway restoration where trenching is needed, and will also include full width resurfacing to leave the project area with a brand new roadway surface throughout the project area. As you've read there, the lowest bid price was submitted by the Tim Group, a local contractor, in the amount of $1.98 million, which includes the reclaimed water system, as I said. Project is funded by Water and Sewer Fund and was included in the annual budget, and the contractor will have 365 days to complete the project. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll stop for
Thank you.
questions.
Commissioner Terrapini, I'm also glad that the Team Group, which is a local company, is going to be doing this project as well.
No doubt.
Very glad about that. We have been trying to complete this project on Seabreeze for a long time, and I'm glad we're moving forward. This is a very important area. As you mentioned, it's been surrounded by water and is very sensitive to the environment, so we've been trying to do that for a long time. And I'm pleased that we're going to provide sewer service to 67 houses. And I'm also appreciative that Mr. Licorice, that we had neighborhood meetings, and we got the recommendations from the residents to go ahead and install the reclaiming water piping at the same time, so that's more cost effective. We're going to use the same ditch, I guess, right?
Certainly, yeah. We'll
So
take
that
advantage
makes
of
a lot
that.
of sense to do that. So I'm looking forward to see this project completed. So it's going to take about a year.
Yeah,
About
yes,
a
it
year.
will.
Vice Mayor Carter, any comments on that item?
Bob, I know we've talked about this in the past, and I think Paul's talked about it too. Why is this important to this area of Tarpon Springs?
I think the primary driver is its location right there in St. Joseph Sound. It's just peninsula. It sticks out there, and you look at it on a map and you look at all those homes that are on septic tanks. You got to think to yourself, man, that should be on sewer. Pulling that stuff out of that area would be a good environmental move. I think that's the primary driver for this.
So then for the record, septic tanks by waters of lakes or bayous or rivers is a bad thing, right?
We generally try to avoid that, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Thanks, Mayor. Bob, I want to congratulate you on this. I know that this has been something that we've talked about on this commission for years, and it's been very, very important to the Seabreeze residents. I can remember at least a couple of different times where, a couple of different years where we tried to go out for some grant funding as it relates to trying to get these homes off of septic systems. So I know that I don't think we have any grant funds for this, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so we didn't get any grant funds, but we definitely tried in the past. And I know that this is a project that's been going on for a long, long time. And the residents out there have been asking for it for a long time. And I'm very pleased to see that you were able to get the reclaimed water in the project. I think that just goes kind of hand in hand in an area like this that's basically a peninsula surrounded by water, in terms of the sensitivities of not only the septic systems, but also, you know, people trying to take care of their lawns and putting in shallow wells, you know, which can lead to some saltwater intrusion. And also a lot of times when you see people with shallow wells this close to the water, they get a lot of sediment in the well water, and then they end up having to treat that with some chemicals. So anytime that we can get away from treating more water with chemicals or sucking more water out of the ground and get stormwater out there, I think that that's a huge benefit. I'm also pleased to see that you have roadway reconstruction in the bid, and that the residents out there won't be left with trenches and ditches and holes in their roadway. So that's a full, basically, I mean, not a full reconstruction, but a full resurfacing side to side, right?
Yes.
That's great. So I'm very, very pleased by this. I'm congratulatory to staff and everybody who's been working on this for a long time, and I'm very excited for the residents who have also been waiting for this. So thanks for everybody's hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say congratulations and thank you to you, Bob. It's been a long time coming. I'm excited to see this get done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vaticius.
Thanks. I'll congratulate you when it's done.
That sounds good.
But it's a good start.
I'll take that.
I do have a question on the bid form number 3. This isn't, the amount is not an estimate, is that right? This is the contract amount?
Yes, sir.
And not to exceed?
Correct.
Okay. And that amount includes the reclaimed water. And without the reclaimed water, it would have been under budget, is that correct? Was the budget just for the sewer line?
We had a budget for the sewer line and we had a budget for what we thought the reclaimed water would be. Both those numbers came in where we thought. So
That's, yeah, it's very close. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's a hair, not even that. So, and the last question, just for information, is it a voluntary hookup once the job is done?
voluntary for reclaimed water, but mandatory for sewer.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
is there a time frame of when they have to hook up?
Yeah, I think ordinance calls for 12 months from final
Time it's
certification of the
completed
project. Yeah.
or ready to go? Okay.
So residents can be looking at least 2 years from now before they would have to mandatory
Yeah.
hook up to this.
I know. Thank you very much on that.
Yes, sir.
No.
Commissioner Terrapini, you
Thanks,
have a
Bob.
comment?
Bob, I had one more question in my notes. Can you confirm that there won't be any special assessments to the residents on this?
Special assessments as in like a tax assessment on
Yeah,
on their
like as
property?
in, hey, we're doing this work and you're going to pay for it. So
Correct. The capital cost is coming out of the water and sewer budget. There's no special assessment.
no
for it.
assessment to
But there are,
individual.
let me make sure I'm clear about this. There are impact fees that are required to be paid
Yeah.
when you hook up,
Understood.
but there's no assessments to pay for the capital cost.
Right.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, are there any public comments on this item? Here none. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails were received.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, do we have anybody online wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do have raised hand at this time.
Please cut them through.
If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Panagiotis Koulias, 595 Peninsula Avenue. I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to talk about finishing the Bay Shore Road all the way to the end of the Stamus household. The sewer needs to be completed. I do not know if you guys already have an expected date to start, if you already have the total cost from where the Andropolis house starts to the end of the Stamus Road. If you guys already have that set up and are going to continue the work that you guys stopped over there. And each and every one of you commissioners, every point you made was valid and can be used and applied towards the Bay Shore Road. Lifelong residents, just like those who live on Seabreeze, the septic tanks, just like you said over there, they're all across the river. It's a peninsula. It should be top priority. And I'd like to hear from the city manager if he has a planned date to start putting in the sewer line again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, do we have anybody else?
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval. Second.
And roll call.
Commissioner Vaticius,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes, thank you. We are now going to the ordinance and resolution. Item number 8 is the resolution 2021-06, urging reform of electric utility energy efficiency goal. Staff report. City Attorney, would you please read the resolution first?
Yes, Mayor. This is Resolution 2021-06, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs, encouraging the Florida Public Service Commission to reform decades-old economic screening practices and setting energy savings goals for Florida electric utilities to comport with national best practices in order to promote the smarter use of energy through efficiency programs to Florida's commercial and residential customers, with a focus on programs for lower and moderate income households. Also providing for transmittal of the resolution to the commissioners and clerk of the PSC and filing in relevant PSC dockets, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. That was the reading of Resolution 2021-06 by title only.
Thank you. I'd like to emphasize that this resolution is initiative of our Sustainability Committee, recommended to the Public Service Commission to improve the energy efficiency programs. And I'd like to go to a staff report.
We have Paul Smith on Zoom to give a staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. Paul Smith, Public Services Director. And this item has to do with us as a city urging the Public Service Commission, the state agency that regulates electric utilities, to enhance the energy efficiency programs. Energy efficiency is the first place to start when you want to make the most use of our energy, including our renewable energy. And it's also a place where customers can save on their electric bills when they're able to participate in programs. Florida is one of the lowest rated states in the nation for energy efficiency programs. And that's why it's important for us to let the Public Service Commission know that this is important to us as a city. They're going into a rulemaking process, and our input right about now would make a big difference, I believe, in having them look at these rules and urge their utilities, required utilities, to expect them to have energy efficiency programs, particularly for low-income customers. I would like to recognize the Sustainability Committee, and in particular, the committee chair, Dory Larson, who brought this to our attention. I think it's a very important initiative, and the Sustainability Committee also recommended that we bring this to you for your approval so that we may forward this on to the Public Service Commission. Also in the audience is Dory Larson, who has a few statements of support to make, Mayor, if you'd like to hear those. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to ask Ms. Larson to speak if it's possible.
Great. Well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for taking up this recommendation from the Sustainability Committee to sign this resolution to make the Florida Public Service Commission aware of your desire to strengthen energy efficiency programs. Like Paul Smith mentioned, we know that energy efficiency is the quickest, cheapest, and easiest way to meet our energy needs. Cutting energy waste by making improvements, sometimes even really minor ones, like basic things like sealing drafty windows, insulating attics, maintaining air conditioning units can go a long way to help families keep more of their money. As you mentioned, Florida remains one of the nation's lowest performing states for utility energy efficiency. And, especially now in these COVID times with reduced wages and higher energy bills, the COVID crisis is already compounding this serious problem of having a high energy burden for some Floridians. And what that term means, high energy burden, is the percentage of gross household income being spent on energy costs. So a lot of families are spending quite a bit of their income to pay their electric bills. And some are deciding, with shutoffs right now between paying the electric bill and putting food on the table. So, when energy savings targets are set too low by the Public Service Commissioners, and they have been for many years now in Florida, electric utilities are underinvesting in energy efficiency programs. So this hinders our ability to meet our local sustainability goals. It also limits customer access to the most effective methods to reduce their monthly power bills. So thank you for asking the Public Service Commission to explore revisions to the Florida Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, also known as FECA, in this goal-setting rule. It'll address head-on the core issues of the process that create roadblocks to capturing energy savings for customers. that have led to very weak energy savings achievements in Florida compared to the rest of the country. So thank you.
Ms. Larson, please convey my thanks to the Sustainability Committee members for the excellent job that they do. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Vice Mayor Carr, any comments?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. Thank you, Ms. Larson, Mr. Smith, and all the committee that brought this forward. These are great items to see that you all are working together on and asking the board to partner with you. So I do appreciate the effort that's being put forth. Thank you.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Oh, no comments, Mayor.
No comments. Commissioner Donovan, comments?
Yeah, I just also want to thank Ms. Larson and the Sustainability Board, Mr. Smith. Happy to support this.
Commissioner Vaticiotis, any comments?
No, I'm grateful to the work of the Sustainability Committee, and I know that we're going to be seeing a lot more coming out of that committee in regard to conservation and also some new initiatives as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks. Are there any public comments on this item?
Peter Lackus, 514 Ashland Avenue. I appreciate the Sustainability Committee bringing this to your attention and you sending it to Tallahassee. I would also recommend you send a copy of it to Chris Sprouse. However, sending a resolution is not as effective as the city taking concrete actions to do some of these things. You're planning on, as Mr. Smith mentioned, we're way behind other states. And what are we called? The Sunshine State. So you're planning on putting in a new clerk's building. Is there any plan to put solar panels on it? Or any plans to put solar panels on any of the other city buildings that have flat roofs or structures that would allow that? Has anybody here reached out to Duke Energy about the Stauffer site and putting out a solar panel field out there? Also, the board it does have the power to go out and get bonding to provide zero interest or low interest loans to citizens of Tarpon to do some of the things that has been recommended by Mr. Smith and Mrs. Larson. Ways to fix their windows, upgrade their air conditioners, put in new insulation, change out energy efficient appliances, and you can do this. This is within your power to help your citizens find ways to conserve energy. This is in all of our best interests. Not only is it saving energy and money for those people who would expend more because they don't have those systems or facilities to help them do this, but in the long run, we are burning less energy and putting less carbon dioxide and pollutants into our airs and waters. So I think there are things you can do in a concrete fashion besides just sending up that resolution to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't fear the truth.
Do we have any other public comments?
Chris Robuski, 1602 Gulf Beach Boulevard, Tarpon Springs, 34689. One of the things that Mr. Delacos brought up that really makes sense is concrete action. And you did that toilet rebate program for water efficiency. You could do that with electric appliances, especially water heaters. Somebody puts in a solar water heater, save a lot of electricity. That's like the third most taxing appliance in a house, the water heater. So air conditioner is number one. I don't recall what number two is. So you could give rebates for that. People could start putting those up right away. And then there are any other major appliances where people could upgrade them and the city could give them a rebate. This would be beneficial for everybody. It's just something that you know you can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this item? Here none. Ms. Jacob, have we got any emails?
No emails.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, have we received, do we have anyone online wishing to speak?
Anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs, roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes. Next is item number 9, Resolution 2021-07, ratifying executive orders. City Attorney, please read the resolution.
Mayor Commissioners, Resolution 2021-07, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, ratifying Executive Order 2021-05 and extending the declaration of local state of emergency to February 9, 2021. Ratifying Executive Order 2021-06 and extending the declaration of local state of emergency to February 16, 2021, and providing for an effective date hereof. That was the reading of Resolution 2021-07 by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Licorice. Do you have any comments on that?
No comments.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Thanks. Are there any public comments on this item? Here none. Are there any emails?
No emails.
Mr. Jemp, do we have anyone online wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do have a raised hand at this time. I'll allow them in.
Panayotis Kolyas, 595 Peninsula Avenue. I appreciate you guys are extending the emergency orders. I did want to double up back on the last BOC meeting when you guys had the CDC guidelines in front of you. It was actually under Section 1 intent. And these requirements are intended to help protect the community from the spread of COVID-19, from contagions being spread at large-scale special events and outdoor events, or with fewer than 1,000 people in attendance at any one time, are strongly encouraged to consider implementing social distancing, face covering, and sanitation measures as recommended by the CDC. So if 1,000 people were allowed to attend any large special event per CDC guidelines, why did the chief of police, our city manager, try to strong arm us into having only 500 people for Epiphany? You guys have some answers that need to be, you guys have some questions that need to be answered. 500 people. And then you guys fought so hard with the city, or so hard with the church, St. Nicholas, and only let 800 people. And all this hysteria, all this, just scaring the public in general, we didn't even have 800 people. As you heard from Attorney Jerry T, we didn't have 500. I don't think there was 400, honestly. So there were CDC guidelines in place as to what a large special event could be. And you all didn't give our church, my church, the benefit of the doubt. And I'm speaking as an individual Orthodox Christian. So that's why I wanted to bring this to your attention regarding any special large events that people may or may not want to do in the city. Maybe even First Fridays, blocking the areas off, allowing 1,000 people in the area. It can happen. It's part of CDC guidelines. We need to start opening up our city again, being more active in trying to move forward past this pandemic. Thank you.
Mr. Jump, do you have anybody else wishing to speak?
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes, thank you. Item number 10 is the resolution 22. Item number 10 is resolution 2021-08, site plan approval and repeal of resolution 2020-74, pitch and penny. This is a quasi-judicial. The city attorney will read the title and he will explain the quasi-judicial process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution 2021-08, a resolution of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, repealing Resolution 2020-74 and approving application number 20-120, requesting site plan approval for the Sepcot Corporation to construct a retail building of approximately 3,460 square feet and gross floor area on 0.30 acres, more or less, of land located at 914 South Pinellas Avenue in the T5A South Pinellas Avenue Transect District, providing for findings, providing for conditions, and providing for an effective date. That was a reading of Resolution 2021-08 by title only. I'll read the quasi-judicial procedures. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding of the Board of Commissioners, where the Board of Commissioners acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Now is the time for any of the commissioners to express any conflicts of interest or any ex parte communications. Have there been any? I don't see any raised hands. So at this point, we can go to staff presentation. And I need to go ahead and swear in everyone that's going to speak on this issue. If you could raise your right hand and be sworn under oath. You swear that the testimony you're about to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McNeese?
Good evening. Pat McNeese, Principal Planner, here filling in for Renee Vincent, our Planning and Zoning Director. So I do have a PowerPoint, which is up on the screen. This is the Pinch a Penny Pool Store, which you all saw back in, approved back in November, I believe. One of the conditions on the approval was that the building would be at ground level and flood-proofed. Staff subsequently determined that the city could not require that. So we have a kind of a compromise design that's come back before you. Applicants or owners can propose flood-proofing, but the city can't require it. We do have city staff here, and I believe the applicant will be attending, the applicant's engineer, by Zoom for further technical details on that if you need it. So I'd like to show you what the design, hopefully, if this works. We have the original elevation for the front, which had the lateral staircase, and the building was within 5 feet of the front property line. The building is now moved back to 10 feet, within 10 feet of the front property line, with a kind of the traditional staircase entrance. So the building is lowered somewhat to a certain point. So there's a combination of floodproofing and lower elevations. This is the Apricot Court elevation, which is the little road to the south. Not much difference there. It's pretty much the same. And this is the rear to the parking lot. So the main difference here is we have a kind of a snaking handicap ramp that went up to the entrance. That's been reduced to a single pathway ramp. That allowed that area to be reduced to about 10 feet between the building and the parking lot. So that's where that other 5 feet went. So the parking lot is in the same place, and then you have the steps to the back. So those are the main differences in how the building looks. So what you have before you is a resolution that repeals the original resolution, adopts a new resolution that removes that condition, and all else is the same in that resolution. So the revised plans that the applicant submitted and are in your packet, those are attached to the resolution. I will point out that there is a typo in the resolution that will be corrected and provided to the clerk. There should be a section 4 to repeal Resolution 2020-74. So that would be the only correction that we have. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, Ms. McNeese, I think the revised design is more appealing than the original. Question that I have is why the correct advice and recommendation in regards to flooding proofing was not provided to us. And I think the applicant, he was agreed to that.
Yes, and I'm not sure that everyone understood the implications of that. And that might be a good question for the applicant or for our staff or both.
Okay, but anyway, I'm in favor for it anyhow. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the commission? Vice Mayor?
I just have a procedural question for you, City Attorney. So this is the resolution. It's quasi judicial. Typically, we see these first reading and second reading, but this is the resolution. We're going to vote on this once, and that's it.
Great. Site plan approval is a resolution, one reading. It's not an ordinance. There's no zoning issues that are addressed. So it is not, there will not be a second public hearing. This is it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from the commission?
Is this for Mr. Powell as well? Or just
No,
for-
this is just for Ms. McNeese at this point.
Thank you.
All right. Do you want to tender in your staff report into evidence? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other witnesses that the city is going to call? For example, is Mr. Powell going to be called as a witness?
No, he's just here to answer questions for the board.
Okay. So do you have questions, Commissioner Vaticiotis, of the building official? Okay, why don't we go ahead and stand up? You've been sworn under oath. There are some questions. Is there anything that you wanted to present? Or are you just here to answer questions?
No, I'm just here to answer questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you.
the city attorney is running the meeting now.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Powell, you and I met on this, and if you could explain what the circumstances were. I know there's still some flood proofing going on. If you can just explain that the way we discussed it.
Yes, sir. So by our ordinance, we cannot build below flood, and also per FEMA regulations. So we've adopted our ordinance that are to keep us in compliance with FEMA. If we direct somebody to build below base flood, we're looking at when FEMA comes and audits us, we are potentially going to raise our CRS rating, which right now we give a 20% discount to the citizens in the community because of our rating. So they could potentially raise that, they could potentially suspend us, or they can go ahead and put us out of the NFIP, which if we get put out of the NFIP, you're going to have no more development, no more mortgages are going to be written here. So we got to be very cognizant of what we're doing when it comes to the flood. We've worked very hard to lower our score and to have a customer request to build below flood that, we can go ahead and look at that. Building that on grade
and floodproofing. And I believe you were looking at between 6 and 8 foot flood panels on that building. Height, exactly. Now you're going to look at approximately, I think, between 3 and 4 foot of dry floodproofing on that building. Also, your electrical inside, we've got to keep everything either above or wired in a wet location. And then the future of the building for future tenants or the current tenant, the insurance rates would be higher because they would be built below flood. So based on our ordinance, FEMA regulations, that's why we can't dictate that they build below. Now we can, they can request it and we can look at it. But I still think building at grade in that area wouldn't be the right thing
So
and having.
voluntarily, there would be no objection to, unless you saw something.
Unless we saw something, you start getting over 3 and 4 foot for
It's a little
dry flood
challenging,
proofing.
yeah. Okay.
That gets a little bit extreme.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Powell? I'm not seeing any. Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. Any other witnesses that the city has? Pat? No? Okay. So now would be the time for applicant to make a presentation. Is the applicant here? Is the applicant online, did you say, Pat?
Yes,
Okay. All right, sir. Can you state your name, please?
James Catalano, 2119 West Cass Street, and I have been sworn.
Okay, so you did raise your hand then, and you were sworn under oath when I
Yes, I
swore?
did.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioners. If you remember at the last meeting, we had basically come in with a fully code compliant, fully developed site plan, which is the process in the city of Tarpon Springs. At that time, the resolution we haven't seen the actual resolution, but our notes showed that it was approved with the condition that we redesign, and I think the word was essentially at grade. So we went back, made a valid attempt. We did agree to go through that. But by the time that you go through the various flood proofing measures, just like your building official had testified, there's kind of a sweet spot for dry flood proofing in about the 3 foot range. It can be managed by a non-technical, like a building or retail manager. And it ends up with a finished floor elevation of 8.0, which is 2.5 feet above the original. If you remember the old, I don't know if it was a pawn shop or a gun shop, something like that. The old slab out there was about 5.5. So it's about 2.5 feet above the original building out there that was demolished earlier. So we just tried to come up with a compromise that was buildable, that still met the Transect code, and also accommodated your wishes that we build near grade.
Thank you. Any questions for this, for the applicant? I'm seeing Vice Mayor raise a hand. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, is it Catalino?
Yes.
Thank you for coming back and presenting a different solution to the approved item. I just have a couple questions. If this is approved tonight, what's the timeline to break ground, to get permits and try to break ground?
As soon as possible. What we would do, because this is kind of a little unusual, because we don't have a fully complete signed and sealed site plan, because we had that approved with conditions. We would have to build those conditions very quickly into the full set of plans. We'd probably be submitting by the end of February for site plan. And on the public meeting side, remember there has been two. There's a third public meeting. The first one is the technical review committee, which is also public.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just have a couple questions from a landscape perspective. I do see that the building is now off the sidewalk further, and it looks like about 8 winged elms have been added to the facade of the building, in between the building and the road. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. The winged elms, although they're beautiful trees, I would like to make a recommendation to you that you keep the 2 winged elms by the entranceways, and you replace the other winged elms with some type of, it's a Yopon holly. It's an upright.
I'm familiar with it.
It's a drought tolerant. They're green year round. The winged elms lose their leaves, and then they'll also end up growing over your sign on the building. So those are just a couple concerns I would have. Is that something you would be amenable to?
Yeah, the only real condition that we have is that we're using the power lines species, which the holly is, as you know, because we have power lines on the frontage.
Yeah, they're more of a dwarf tree.
Right.
And then there's also, I mean, that's a lot of space. It's about 10 feet. So that's a lot of mulch space. Would you be amenable to adding kunti palms, which are a dwarf plant, and again, native, dark green, year round, in between the building and the sidewalk?
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I mean, it's any kind of ground cover. We're going to put some sort of ground cover there anyhow, so that's fine. I think it look good.
Yeah.
Because the building is still a little bit elevated. I mean, it's at 8.0. The sidewalk's about 4. So yeah, I think it'd be good.
Yeah, and the kuntis get about 2.5 feet tall, I think.
Right, perfect.
Which is, I think it'd be a nice benefit. The last time you were here, I talked about adding Royal Poncianas, and I realized that was a little tight of an area to add those. And I did talk to city staff about that and suggested that a yellow tabiosa be an alternative. So I would like to make that recommendation, so there's no issues with encroaching sidewalks or lifting sidewalks or anything along those lines.
I'm not familiar with the location you're talking about, because we just finished the Pinellas Avenue frontage with hollies and kuntis. Because I remember the Poinciana, because the building was so tall. Where are you talking about the Tababuya?
So it would be towards the I think it was on the south side of the building.
Oh, the larger tree, kind of the south. It's in the southwest corner there. The shade tree.
I think initially from the initial conversation that we had, the first meeting, we talked about on the south side of the building itself.
Right.
To help kind of buffer that a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to cover up a sign, but it'd probably be like in the southwest corner of the building, not the southwest corner of the.
The lot. Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I just noticed also in between a dumpster corral and the building, there's not really any ground cover on the plan. So, I mean, I don't know if the jasmine would continue in that area, or if you would look at kuntis again. That's a lot of, I mean, that's 11 feet, I think, to cover with mulch. So you're going to have some issues with that during rainstorms and that drifting away.
Okay.
There's one additional question I have. So the north wall is going to be a large white wall. It doesn't look like there's any windows on it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Something I'm working with some other individuals on currently are getting some old pictures from the Historical Society. Are you familiar with Tarpon very well?
Yes, I was baptized in St. Nick's.
Okay. So Christopher Still has a mural that was added to the chamber building sometime in 2020. And it's not painted. It's actually like it was put on with some type of heat gun of some sort. Would you, I mean, as an applicant, would you be open to working with the Historical Society with getting a couple old pictures and putting on the north side of the blank white wall just to add a little more character to that?
I can only gauge the sentiment of my client, and he's very excited about being in Tarpon. He's very excited about the Transact Code. So what I can commit without him being here is that we will most definitely, because you know that we were waived from the art right. fee, but I know that he will most definitely contact you to follow up on that. I think that's something he might be excited about, frankly, but I can't commit for him on something like that. But it does sound like something he would be interested in.
Okay. Maybe I'll just ask the city manager to follow up about that one.
Okay. Do you know how we would go about doing that? Like who exactly we would contact?
You could reach out to me directly, and I'll follow up with the city manager.
Okay.
And I'll get your information from Pat or Renee.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds good.
And I think that's everything on my notes. Let me just check real quick.
Yeah, and I do know when we're going back to windows on that wall, it's because of the retail space. So that's why that's a solid wall, shelving and whatnot.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It seemed like an opportunity because I'm working with some other business owners about that.
Yeah.
You can add some nice character to the area. And also, I mean, the property line's pretty close to the building right there. So
Yeah.
you can't really put any foliage or plants right there.
Right.
So I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Terrapini?
I don't have a, excuse me, I don't have a question. I just wanted to tell the applicant that I appreciate your flexibility with us and your willingness to go with us on our last recommendation, which was to go ground floor. And I just wanted to apologize for slowing you down in the process a little bit. And just to let you know, we do appreciate your flexibility. The building official, I spoke with him basically the day after our meeting. He said, man, I wish I was there to give you all a heads up, but what you did may be, aesthetically pleasing, but it has negative consequences for X, Y, and Z. So I'm sorry to go down that path with you, but I definitely appreciate your flexibility, and I think the project looks better than ever. So look forward to seeing y'all build, and thanks again.
Well, you're welcome. And I just want to thank the staff. I mean, they've just been outstanding. The flood manager, building official, Renee and Pat, they've just been wonderful getting through this.
Good to hear.
Commissioner Vaticiotis, did you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
One, I just, for the record, I would like for you to state that the flood proofing that you're doing is voluntary.
We're proposing the flood-proof solution with a finished floor elevation of 8.0. That's what we're proposing to the board, yes.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure that kind of to cover our CRA that this is a voluntary action on your part.
Understood.
And you mentioned that you were waived from the public art fee, but could you just explain that? I don't think it was a waiver. I don't think you needed to pay.
It's not a waiver. It's just the total building cost. I think it comes in about $540,000. So we're under $1 million. So, I think it's something, judging from his character and his excitement about the area, I think it's something he'd be amenable to. I just can't commit for him because I don't hold the purse strings.
No, I'm not getting at that. I just stated that you were waived from, it wasn't a waiver.
No, not a waiver. No, you're right. No, we were exempt per code.
Yeah. And I also very much appreciate the look of the new building and the lower height of the building too. So that looks very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, do you have questions?
No.
Okay. Anyone in the audience would like to speak on this issue? Ms. Jacobs, any emails on this?
No
I do have a
emails.
redirect for Ms. McNeese.
You have another question for Ms. McNeese?
For Ms., yes, I do have.
Okay, let's go ahead and get that handled before we go.
Just for the record, for my own benefit, how do we select trees for this site? What does the developer have as far as tree selections? Do we have a list that he picks from, or?
Well, as you all know, the Transit Code does not require a large amount of landscaping. It's pretty minimal. As far as the trees that can be planted, we do have in our regular code, which doesn't really apply here. There's a list of exotic trees that you're not supposed to plant, and a list of native trees. It's an old list, pretty outdated. I think it's something we'll be looking at when we come back with land development code update. But that's the only list I'm aware of. Now, our arborist, and Kevin can speak to this, she is very good about giving suggestions, educating people about their tree choices, and she reviews all these landscape
This is
plans.
our arborist.
Yes,
Yeah.
Shannon.
Is there, just as far as a process, I know how the process goes for ordinances, but is there a process for amending the Transit code as well?
Yes.
So if we wanted to add a list of approved trees, we could do that by ordinance, is that correct?
Yes, we could.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on to anyone that joined in on Zoom. Mr. Jump, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak on this agenda item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. Mayor, it's back to the commission for consideration and approval.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any other commission comments?
Just have a quick question. I did make some suggestions from a landscape perspective. Can we put that in the conditions?
My feeling is nothing has been set, and I think that the developer's representative stated that he was going to work with the city manager to come up with something and contact you as well on it. We can't make a requirement. I guess we could. I'm not open for making a requirement for landscaping. If he's voluntarily doing it, fine. I don't want to require him. It's not a provision of our code to require him. We don't have an accepted tree list. And quite frankly, I appreciate what you do, but to me, it smacks of a hole in our planning process for being able to make these modifications on the fly without the developer having an opportunity to weigh in on them or think of them. And so he's committing to doing that. I think the fact that he would be willing to consider it, just like he did with the flood proving, is where we left it last time. I think that's as much as what I'd want to do.
Vice Mayor, the way I see it is the applicant is very flexible. He's willing to take your advice, but the way you presented him, I thought that was just a recommendation on your part.
We're approving a site plan, so it's part of the site plan, just like the elevation of the building, where the doors are and things along those lines. So that's why I'm making a recommendation to add it to the conditions.
What condition was that, Vice Mayor?
There's a couple conditions. There's 8 winged elms in between the building and the sidewalk. Keep the 2 winged elms by the entrance of the building. Replace the other 6 winged elms with Yopon hollies, which are a native tree. Add Kunti palms in the area between the building and the sidewalk, and also between the dumpster and the building, where the applicant talked about being ground cover, but that wasn't actually on the application for the new site plan. And then on the original conditions, it talked about replacing the ligustrum hedge with the viburnum suspensum, which that was already part of the original condition. And then also it had a royal ponciana tree in there, which I talked about replacing it with the yellow tabiosa. That was part of the original conditions.
And is the applicant still on the line?
I am.
And did you have any objection to those suggestions from the Vice Mayor?
No. In fact, I understand completely where he's coming from. I just wanted to say that we didn't prescribe any mulch. The ground cover was entirely jasmine, so it's not a problem for us to swap out jasmine plants for Kunti palms. It's a preference, and I think it's probably an enhancement, and I don't know if there's a cost to it. So, I mean, I already had all the notes, whether it's part of the resolution or not, it's going to show up on the site plan.
Oh,
So, you know, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just letting you know that I've already got it written down.
I'm good to amend the motion to include those things.
Okay.
Thank you. What about the second? Second will accept it?
I'll stay my second because the developer's okay with it.
Okay.
What is the motion now?
The motion is to include the recommendations from the Vice Mayor.
And approve.
And the staff would like a clarification that would replace the current condition number 10, which
yes.
talks about okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
No.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes. Okay. The item number 11A and 11B are related. 11B is a quasi-judicial. These items will be discussed together, but we're going to vote separately. The item number 11A is the application 20-109, City of Tarpon Springs, City Hall property. The ordinance 2020-28, future land use map amending, and this is a second reading. City Attorney, if you please read the ordinance, and also, do you have to explain again the process of quasi judicial?
That's up to you, Mayor. If you want me to go ahead and do it, I can. Otherwise, it doesn't look like there's anyone here in the audience,
Okay.
except city staff. So I'll go ahead and read ordinance 2020-28, an ordinance of the city of Tarpon Springs, Florida, amending the future land use map for 2.82 acres more or less of real property located at 324 East Pine Street, 410 North Ring Avenue, and 395 North Gross Avenue from land use designation RL residential low and RU residential urban to land use designation I institutional, providing for findings and providing an effective date. That was a reading of ordinance 2020-28 by title only. It was published in the Tampa Bay Times by title only with a map on September 30th, 2020, and again on January 27th, 2021. With that being said, Mayor, I'll skip the quasi-judicial proceedings reading.
Nobody's here.
No one is here. Pat, you've already been sworn under oath. If you want to go ahead and make a presentation on behalf of the applicant, City of Tarpon Springs.
Thank you. This is a second reading on basically on a change to the future land use map and to the zoning map for the city hall property. This is a change from residential low to residential residential low and residential urban to institutional on the future land use map. And then the zoning will go from CRM and R70A to public, semi-public. So those are residential designations going to really an institutional designation. I do have a couple of typos on these ordinances too. I seem to be the queen of typos this evening, so I apologize for that. On ordinance 2020-28, the change should be to institutional, not transportation. On 2020-29, under section 2, the zoning map is hereby amended to public, semi-public. These went through a countywide map amendment from residential low medium to public, semi-public. That was approved this morning by the Board of County Commissioners. And so this is coming back to you for second reading, and there's no other new information. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission? Seeing none. Did you want to tender your staff report and the evidence, Ms. McNeese?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the city is the applicant and city staff is making a presentation as well. So we don't have an applicant to speak. So at this point, we can go directly to the public. Is there anyone here in the audience? I see one individual wishing to speak on this item. No. Ms. Jacobs, is there any email on this particular agenda item?
No emails were received.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to participate or make a comment on this ordinance?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. It's back to the commission.
Thank you. We need a motion
Motion to approve.
for 11A.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do we have any other comments? Hear none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor Loses.
Yes. The next is item number 11B. This is the ordinance 2020-29 zoning atlas amendment. This is a second reading, and this is also quasi-judicial.
Motion to approve.
Wait.
I need to read this ordinance title. This is ordinance 2020-29, an ordinance of the city of Tarpon Springs, Florida, amending the official zoning map of the city of Tarpon Springs, Florida for 2.82 acres more or less of real property located at 324 East Pine Street, 410 North Ring Street, and 395 Gross Avenue from CRM 7.5 conditional residential mix and R70A single family residential district to PSP public semi-public district, providing for findings and providing for an effective date. That was the second final reading of ordinance 2020-29 by title only. It was published in the Tampa Bay Times by title with a map on September 30th, 2020 and January 27th, 2021. So, Ms. McNeese, did you want to make your presentation?
Okay, again, another second reading. This is the Anclote Isles subdivision. This is I think I promised the last typo, 2020-30.
No, we're still on ordinance 2020-29, the zoning atlas amendment for the city application.
Sorry.
So you talked about the land use and now we're on the zoning aspect of it.
And I covered that in my earlier presentation.
Thank you. Any questions about the zoning ordinance? Okay. Since the city is the applicant as well as the presenter, anyone in the audience wishes to speak to this agenda item? Ms. Jacobs, is there any emails on this one?
No emails.
Mr. Jump, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak on this agenda item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. Back to you, Mayor.
We need a motion on 11B, which is the ordinance 2020-29.
Motion to approve. Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes, thank you. Next is item 12A and 12B. 12B is a quasi judicial. They're both related. These items will be discussed together, but we're going to vote separately. The item number 12A is the application 20-135, the Ankle Isles, and this is the ordinance 2020-35 future land use map amendment. This is a second reading. City Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. This is ordinance 2020-35, an ordinance of the city of Tarpon Springs, Florida, amending the future land use map for 8.61 acres more or less of real property located on the southwest corner of Anclote Road and Marina Drive, and known as Anclote Isle subdivision, from land use designation CR, commercial recreation, to land use designation RL, residential low, providing for findings and providing an effective date. That was a reading of ordinance 2020-35 by title only. It was published in the Tampa Bay Times by title with a map on October 28, 2020 and January 27, 2021. That being said, Mr. McNeese, do you want to make your presentation?
Yes, thank you. And to summarize this item, or the entire item, so we're going from commercial recreation to residential low, and from the waterfront development to residential plan development and zoning. The Board of County Commissioners approved the county-wide map amendment from resort to residential low medium this morning. And there is a typo in ordinance 2020-35, or an omission. It should say in section 2 that the map is amended to residential low. And with that, I'll answer any questions. There's no other new information on this.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. McNeese?
Ms. McNeese, the city is the applicant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this agenda item? Ms. Jacobs, anyone that has sent in an email?
No emails.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak on this agenda item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. It's back to the commission.
The chair will entertain a motion on 12A, application, ordinance 2020-35.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And roll call.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes. Next is item 12B, the ordinance 2020-36, zoning atlas amendment. This is a second reading. City Attorney, if you please read the title.
Yes, Mayor. This is ordinance 2020-36, an ordinance of the city of Tarpon Springs, Florida, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Tarpon Springs for 8.61 acres more or less of real property located on the southwest corner of Anclote Road and Marina Drive, and known as Anclote Isle subdivision, from zoning designation WD-1 waterfront development to zoning designation RPD residential plan development, providing for findings and providing an effective date. That was the second final reading of ordinance 2020-36 by title only. It was published in the Tampa Bay Times by title with a map on October 28, 2020 and January 27, 2021. And I know that Ms. McNeese gave her presentation on this all together, and so land use and zoning. Anyone have any questions of Ms. McNeese on the zoning aspect? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this item? Ms. Jacobs, anyone had sent in an email on this item?
No emails.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak on this ordinance 2020-36?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Mayor, it's back to the commission for consideration.
Thank you. We need a motion to approve the ordinance 2020-36.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ms. Jacobs, roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes, thank you. Before we go into item number 13, I'd like us to take 5 minutes recess, please. At 8:31 p.m. Item number 13A and 13B will be discussed together, but we're going to vote separately. Item number 13A is the signs, poles, lighting, design requirements. This is the ordinance 2020-40. Parking lot subdivision signs and lighting. This is the first reading. City Attorney, would you please read the title?
Yes, Mayor. This is ordinance 2020-40, an ordinance of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, regulating the design of traffic control signs and light posts in parking lots and subdivisions, adding section 127.06 of Article 9 of Appendix A, the Comprehensive Zoning and Land Development Code of the City of Tarpon Springs Code of Ordinances concerning parking lot traffic control signage and lighting standards, amending section 163.10 and 163.11 of Article 10 of Appendix A of the Tarpon Springs Code of Ordinances concerning subdivision street signs and street lights, providing for codification and severability, and providing an effective date. That was a reading of ordinance 2020-40 by title only.
Thank you. Staff report. Ms. McNeese?
Yes, and I have a slideshow. See if this will work this time. Oh, there it goes. All right. Yes, the first ordinance we'll be discussing is proposed ordinance 2020-40. This and the next one we'll be looking at 2020-39. We're both workshopped with you. Ms. Vincent discussed these items with you back in November. So we've brought back these two ordinances. This first one is to propose to add some basically design standards for lighting and for traffic control signage in parking lots and in new subdivisions. And both of these ordinances add graphic illustrations to your code. So this is the first one that we're looking at. For signage, the traffic control signage, these illustrations will be added, and we've got some basic standards. The powder-coated poles, the shape, the dimensions, the required base, and the requirement for a border around those signs. The ordinance basically exempts industrial uses and properties from these requirements when they're outside the special area plan district. For lighting, we have illustration of 3 examples of lighting. And again, some standards including the powder-coated poles or the black or dark poles, the shape and the decorative base, and the requirement for shielded or cut-off lighting. And again, the industrial properties would be exempt under the ordinance if they are outside the special area plan. I will insert here that the Planning and Zoning Board did look at this at their January 25th meeting. On this item, they suggested that the wording be changed slightly so that it doesn't sound like one of these 3 specific pictures designs are required, but that's something similar to these or that meets the standards. So that was a suggestion of theirs. That change would go to the parking lot, section 12706B, and the subdivision, section 16311B. So that's the first ordinance. I don't know if you want me to go on and discuss the second one, or if you want to talk about this one first. We can do that.
Okay.
Yes, do you have any questions?
I just want to comment on that, the first one. We had many discussions regarding the design and the requirements of the signs and poles and lights and all that. I'm glad that in the ordinance that you have all the pictures there make a lot easier for people to understand exactly what is required to have. But also I agree with the signs, poles, and street names of a subdivision should be approved by staff. and it should be paid and installed by the developer. So I'm glad with that. That's the only comments that I have. I'm okay with the designs that we got, because it's actually based on the consensus we had during the work sessions. Vice Mayor Carr?
Thanks, Mayor. Pat, just for clarification, there's no requirements in here that to say they have to look like these three pictures, right? I'm looking at the 1, 2, 3, 4. It just talks about the different items.
On the signs or the?
I'm sorry, the lights.
The lights.
Was that the
Well, the
recommendation
statement
by the P&Z?
says, currently says the design for parking lot lighting shall be as shown in figure 2 below and shall meet the following design standards. So Planning and Zoning Board was concerned that, for example, a future staff person that didn't have the history on the ordinance might say, well, you have to have one of these 3 lights. That was their concern. I mean,
So the recommendation was just add or similar to one of these 3?
yeah, so the proposed change is the design for parking lot lighting shall be substantially similar to those shown in figure 2 below, or shall meet the following standards.
I think that makes sense. There's different lights that are out there
Right.
post-wise. So, I mean, and it could be that they stop making certain lights like this,
Right.
where you can't even acquire them. So I think that makes sense to add that caveat.
I think one of the signs, one of the lights there is the same thing we've got down to the docks, isn't it?
Similar, yeah.
Yeah. That's it?
Oh, and then
Okay.
I think this is something that's, it's going to be great for Tarpon Springs, I believe, from a development standpoint. I think this is something that's going to help raise the aesthetics of all applications that come through. Although it's small items and details, but it's really the details that really come through, and I think we'll continue to show that Tarpon Springs is just a beautiful area to be and visit. Thank you.
Commissioner Donovan, comments? Questions?
Yeah, Commissioner Terrapini, did you have any?
I was just going to say a few things. Go ahead.
I didn't see you.
That's all right. I was just going to concur with you, Mayor, that, this is something that we had talked about in at least one workshop, and I think that staff's done a good job bringing it home, specifically Ms. Vincent when she came back. I think that she was able to contribute quite a bit to the board in the discussion, and some of the renderings, I think, helped us tremendously in trying to make our decision by way of example. So I don't have any questions or comments, but I am appreciative that it's finally come back to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize. I didn't mean to skip you.
That's all right.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I want to thank staff. I think this is a great presentation. I think they give some really solid examples in here. And I was reading on the more detailed ordinance page, it says, substantially similar. And I think that's a great point to add. My question would just be, who's going to determine that? So who's going to be able to step in and say, hey, this is substantially similar?
Well, that will be a staff review, and the standards that are listed will be our guide as to whether the light meets the code.
Okay, that's my only question for this one. Thank you.
Commissioner Tikiotis?
I have one. Ms. McNeese, I've gone through both the ordinances thoroughly, and I've got some questions on the historic design guidelines too, because these 3 actually kind of mesh together. I think I certainly agree with substantially similar is the proper wording for this. The question I have is, I did not see any reference to the Historic Preservation Board anywhere in the ordinance. My suspicion is that these do have to go through the Historic Preservation Board. Based on in the next ordinance, the guidelines with that exhibit shows that what has to be done, what has to go to the Historic Preservation Board. I know, and that's going to give the flexibility, but I do know that a lot of our ordinances are designed for somebody that may want to do some due diligence to decide what they need and that sort of thing. My feeling is something should be put in there that states that, regardless of what you see here in the historic district, it would have to go to the Historic Preservation Board. I mean, am I missing something here, or is it already, I didn't see it. I thought I went through it in detail, looking for some reference to the Historic Preservation Board. And also, the Historic Preservation guidelines are different, but I'm going to talk to those as well, because there is some cross-reference between, in those design guidelines to this ordinance, but there's nothing in this ordinance to that or the process of the Historic Preservation Board. And I'm a little concerned that we're just kind of not addressing that. And I'd like to consider, at least have the commission consider adding something to that, so there's no misunderstanding that those buildings in the historic district would have to go through the HPV for these lights and signs and so forth.
Yes,
We'll
you
discuss
are,
that,
you
but
are
that's-
correct. There is no reference here. And yes, the guidelines, the Heritage Preservation Board does address lighting and has current and
But we don't have
proposed
anything in this.
guidelines for that. And we could certainly bring the ordinance back with some sort of reference language if the board wishes for that.
Maybe you can include that for the second reading?
Yes, along with the other change.
Not for this reading. And then also, this whole business of what we're doing this evening has been at a previous workshop. I think since Ms. Vincent was here as well, I think it was an agenda item, is that correct? Where we had discussed that
Yes.
these weren't going to be hard requirements, but especially the design guidelines, design standards, if you will, for the signage later would be something along similar to what we're saying here, would be substantially similar to the signs and so forth.
Yes.
We discussed that already, and I was comfortable then, I'm comfortable now, so thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on this item? Hear none. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails.
Mr. Jump, do we have anybody on Zoom wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion for 13A, the ordinance 2020-40.
Motion approved.
Second.
And roll call, Ms. Jacobs.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes, thank you. We are now going to the item 13B, which is the ordinance 2021-39, sign design requirements. This is the first reading. City Attorney, would you please read the ordinance?
This is ordinance 2020-39, an ordinance of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, amending Article 11, sign regulations, providing for graphic illustrations of sign types, establishing incentives for creative signs, increasing the required setback for certain sign types, allowing for certain sign types of roof signs, discouraging the use of pole signs, establishing a landmark sign designation process, providing for codification and severability, and providing an effective date. That was a reading of ordinance 2020-39 by title only.
Ms. Pat, you got the floor again.
Yes, and I'd like to bring up the slideshow again. Yes, this, as you know, the sign ordinance had a pretty major overhaul when it was adopted in June of 2020. And at that time, you all had asked Ms. Vincent to come back with some design ideas for encouraging some more creative signs. That was included in your workshop in November 2020. And this draft ordinance is the result of that. So what we have is some requirements, proposed requirements in the sign ordinance that provide, again, graphics to add to your code that illustrate not only some of the newer creative sign types, but sign types that are in your code now to help the people envision what each sign term means. This establishes incentives for good design by allowing an increased height and increased area, sign face area for certain types of freestanding signs. And this may be approved by the planning and zoning director with an appeal if there's a denial or challenge to that, and appeal directly to the Board of Commissioners. This discourages the pole signs, but does not non-conform all the pole signs in the city. And it specifies sloped roof mount signs. So these will be signs that won't project above that roof line, but could be allowed on some of the sloped roofs in the city. And it also adds landmark sign designations. So looking at the ordinance, the proposed strike-through underline starts on numbered page 17 of the ordinance. Landmark signs are on page 26, freestanding on page 32. It's a pretty big ordinance to flip through, so that's where those are. And these are some of the illustrations, examples of the illustrations of desirable and undesirable freestanding signs, with the pole sign obviously being the undesirable one. For the creative signs, the more desirable types, we've increased the setback to 10 feet from the front property line, and the pole signs remain at 5 feet. These are some of the clarifying graphics for signs we have now: canopy signs, awning signs, wall signs. This illustrates the roof signage. So in the lower right-hand corner, you see the type that's not allowed, the sign that projects above that roof line. The others would be allowed under this ordinance change. So the creative sign allowance or incentive really is a 25% potential increase in height and a potential increase of 25% for the sign face, the copy basically. And again, approved by the Planning and Zoning Director with appeal to the Board of Commissioners. And that is codified in the appeals section of the ordinance. And then these are the three standards. So you can see those there in the ordinance, the three standards by which these creative signs are judged or evaluated. Moving on to landmark sign designations. This one, we do have a process built in with this draft ordinance to take these to the Heritage Preservation Board and have them look at that first, and then have those approved by the Board of Commissioners to be a landmark sign. These are signs that are basically in existence for at least 30 years. And then there are standards there about the design and the cultural significance and those types of things for these signs. Again, Planning and Zoning Board looked at this on the 25th of January. With respect to this ordinance 2020-39, they recommended unanimous approval actually of both ordinances. Overall, they just wanted us to express to the board just that the sign code is in their observation, sign codes are really a big code enforcement challenge sometimes, and just wanted to have the board recognize the, as far as the burden on the city's code enforcement program, and that we recognize that going forward. So I told them I would express that. And with that, I'll respond to any questions you might have.
Yes, I got a couple of questions to ask you. First, I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Department, all of you, for working with us during the workshops to come up with these changes. I think it's a lot of improvements. A couple of questions that I'd like to ask you is the discontinuing signs that if nothing happens to the sign or within the 60 days, you consider to be a discontinued sign, correct?
Yes, I believe it is 60 days.
The question that I have is, now with the pandemic, COVID-19, many stores, some stores, they might be closed and not being able to rent it. So are they going to be they're going to be disqualified as a discontinued sign? Do you know?
And we've
I mean,
had,
this is a concern with the economy that we have now. I like to have something to show that. I don't know exactly what stores do we have closed due to the economy, but I don't want these people to be, penalized because of that.
yes, and we have had, since the ordinance was overhauled,
Yeah.
we've had a few, I want to say maybe half a dozen at most, that code enforcement has coordinated with our staff on, where they ask the questions. So that would be a business that's been closed, that the signed copy is still up there.
Yeah.
We've been working with those owners on that because we recognize, as far as establishing whether there really is a business there, we've been trying to work with owners to voluntarily comply with that as just out at the starting gate to see how that goes. So it's been going well so far.
Mr. Trask, is that a legal question?
I'm sorry, I was reading the code. So your question again, sir?
The question is, due to the pandemic, COVID-19, some of the stores might be closed longer than 60 days. So will be, their sign, if they don't do anything with it, will be abandoned or discontinued sign. Is this something that we can actually put in there that due to the economic difficulties that some places that they're facing, it might be something that we need to look at it?
So the answer is yes, and I can give you an example that the city of Dunedin did that in years past, where they provided exemptions for certain periods of time, and they directly related it to unemployment figures. As an example, if unemployment was below 4%, as an example, then the exception would not apply. If it was over 4%, then they could extend it for a period of time. So yes, we could add things to the code that addresses financial situations, but it would have to be, in my mind, attached to some review process that is not subjective.
Okay.
If you can rely specifically to a government document, for example, unemployment rate, in my example, that would be something that you would want to do.
Can you provide some recommendation that it might be useful to that?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
And of course, I'm going to ask to include that to the motion. The other thing that I would like to ask, if you please explain the appeal process. Mr. Trask?
So the appeal, can you point, do you know what section it is?
Yes, that is, starts on page 17, 179.04 is the section.
Right, so that it's, so there's been a recommendation to add an additional appeal relative to the creative sign provision. The other portion of the code is going to remain consistent with what the adoption was in June of last year. So it looks to me like that you file a notice of appeal with the city manager or the Board of Adjustment containing the specific grounds of the appeal. And it would be considered within certain timeframes that are listed there on page 17. 179.04 is the code section I'm referring to. The action that takes place there. As for the new addition, subparagraph B, it has been added for the creative sign provisions. It is written and read there. Any appeals related to an application of creative sign provisions for increased height or area shall be made to the Board of Commissioners unless the signage is located within his designated historic district, whereby such appeal will be heard by the Historic Preservation Board. So I don't know if that answers your question, but nothing is changing other than adding an additional paragraph B.
Okay. Mrs. McNeese, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Vice Mayor Carr.
I just have, again, just thank staff for their work on this one. I know there's been a couple of workshops that we've done over the past year and a half. So I appreciate you bringing those changes back. And if you could thank Renee and also City Manager, thank you for bringing this back forward.
Commissioner Terrapini? No. Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, I want to thank you and the P and Z board and everybody that's had their hands in this. I know, a few months ago, whenever that was, when we, kicked it down the road a little bit, I was worried that something might get lost in translation, but I think everybody did a great job of expressing exactly what we talked about in those work sessions. My only question is on page 14 of the actual ordinance. It discusses needing the approval and the permit. My just question is how long that process might take. And I say that just from a safety perspective. If somebody notices that the sign's damaged, or in the summer, maybe there's like a hurricane warning or something like that, and it discusses needing a permit and everything, even if you want to repair pretty much anything on the sign. So how long does that process take, and are there any exceptions to it?
As far as the permit process, I believe, if I remember right, we adopted a time. Yeah,
So he's
we've got
referring to
page 15.
Page
Go.
14, 179.01. So there is no specific time frame. It all depends on the application itself. So if somebody was to provide an application that was incomplete, then it would take a little bit longer, but it would be reviewed, normal permit review process. I'm not sure if the building official is still here, but the problem that we run into a lot of the times is that when we receive applications for repair or construction, remodel, rebuild, something like that, the application is not complete when it comes, and so it slows the process a little bit.
And we do have in section 179.03 some timelines for permit review in which we have to respond.
Okay.
So
15 days.
15 days, and then upon approval by planning director to issue the permit within 10 days, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember discussing that now during a work session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Tikutis?
Ms. McNeese, just to follow up with the Historic Preservation Board or Historic District aspect, not so much with the signage, but I'm sorry, with the traffic signs and things, but with this one in particular, I know that the design guidelines were worked a great deal through the Historic Preservation Board and numerous for about a 3-year period altogether with changes and things. Has this been reviewed by this ordinance? Has this been reviewed by the Historic Preservation Board? I know it's gone to the P&Z.
No, it has not.
Okay. When is the next Historic Preservation Board?
March the first Monday of March, whatever that is, the first.
March 1st?
Mm-hmm.
Will we get this? We'll get this back February 23rd. Is that correct?
It's currently scheduled for second reading on the 23rd. Yes.
Okay. All right. It would have been nice for the historic, as a courtesy to them, and also for them to have their comments for Historic Preservation Board from a historic district perspective, to have that included in here as well as the P&Z. So I don't know if any of the other commissioners have any concerns about that, but I think it would have been nice to extend that as a courtesy. Mayor, I have a question for you. And I don't take this the wrong way, but I brought up adding the reference to the Historic Preservation Board in the street sign ordinance, and you said we could do that in the second reading. You've asked for the exemption to the 60-day sunset as part of this recommendation. Why can't we do that as part of the second reading as well?
Say that again, please.
I asked for some reference in the street sign ordinance to the Historic Preservation Board that it would be, that they would have to review for subdivisions and so forth in the historic district. And you said we could do that in the second reading, which I think is a natural way to do it. I didn't have any objection, but you'd like to have this exception to the 60-day sunset on these signs because of some financial hardship or economic hardship rolled into this recommendation, rather than for the first reading rather than the second reading. What do you see as the distinction between the two? Why do you want one for the second reading and this one for the first reading?
That can be on second reading. That's not it was not a preference at all. I just want to make sure the people that
That it gets included.
it's included in
Okay,
there.
thank you. That's all. I just want to make sure that
And the
we're
reason I
consistent in
said
the
second
process.
reading, the last one, is that will give time to the Historical Preservation Board to take a look at it. I mean, that was not
Do you
knowing
think-
when the meeting,
Would you want to wait until the first meeting in March, until after the
The
HPV
question that I
looks-
will ask is, does it need to be re-advertised or what? If we're going to wait.
So let's look at that.
I think it would be.
And maybe the city clerk can comment on it. It looks like, oh, it doesn't show on the card. Yes, it is. It would have to be re-advertised again. This is 2020-24. Or, I'm sorry, 2020-39. Yes, it's already been advertised. So it'd have to be advertised again. Either that, or when it comes up on February 23rd, we would have to say that it was continued to a date certain, and we can get around the advertising aspect of it. So, but we would definitely have to call it up on the agenda so that we can let the public know.
I'm okay with that, if we
To
have
delay it until the
consensus with that,
HPV
yeah.
looks, yes,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Well,
I
that was
think-
the purpose of saying in the second reading, to make sure that was covered.
I appreciate that. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Do we have any public comments on this item? Here none. Ms. Jacobs, any emails?
No emails.
Mr. Jump, do we have anyone online wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. We need a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any other comments? If not, roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes, thank you. Next is item number 14, Resolution 2021-03. This is the adoption of the Historic Design Guidelines. City Attorney, please read the resolution.
Mayor, Commissioners, Resolution 2021-03, a resolution of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, approving the adoption of the City of Tarpon Springs Historic District Design Review Guidelines Manual dated February 2021, providing for findings, providing for conditions, and providing an effective date. That was the reading of Resolution 2021-03 by title only.
Ms. McNeese, staff
Yes.
report.
So I am very, very pleased to bring this to you.
Yes.
Your newly developed historic
What's in there?
district design review manual. So this would replace your existing 1999 document, so it's long overdue. This project was completed with the Department of State, Florida Department of State grant that was used to retain the services of a consultant, JMT Incorporated. That process started in December 2019, was completed in July of 2020. Your Heritage Preservation Board has been fantastic. They're an excellent board. They ran a great public participation process and really guided this project to fruition. And I want to thank them. This is a big step for the historic program. The resolution to adopt this is crafted so that the board will adopt basically Chapter 4, the guidelines themselves. And if there are any proposed future changes to those, that would come back through the Heritage Preservation Board and then to you for that Chapter 4. The rest of the document is really informational mostly. And so that would go to the Heritage Preservation Board. Things like if adding new links, new maps, architectural types that might be added in the future, things like that. And I won't go through the document or overview. I could talk about it all night, how much better it is than the current one, but I won't do that. We do have our consultants on Zoom. We have Sarah McLaughlin and Caitlin Hernstad of JMT Incorporated on Zoom for any questions you might have about the technical aspects or guidelines themselves. They're prepared to give a brief discussion of guidelines if you'd like that. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. McNeese. I really don't have any questions, but the updated guidelines are so detailed and easy to understand it. It has the materials to use with different examples. I think it's very, very clear. But I'd like to congratulate the staff and also the Heritage Preservation Board for overseeing this project, and also for involving the public and the organizations, provide us the input and their recommendation, which was included into this effort. So I support the recommendation from the Heritage Preservation Board to approve this resolution with the 2 conditions that they included on there. Vice Mayor Carr?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Pat, thank you for the presentation and providing the backup in advance. Also, I do want to express my thanks to the HPB and also the previous members of the HPB as well. This is something that's been a long time coming. Even when I sat on the Historic Preservation Board years ago, we knew that we were working with an outdated guidelines, and it was difficult at times to we had to follow the guidelines, but we knew we were a little frustrated when the applicant was there before us. So I'm glad these are being updated. I do have a couple questions for the record and some clarifications if the individuals online can answer a couple of questions. So one of the things I remember is the window replacement. And a lot of the windows in some of the buildings have been replaced in the past. So for example, you may see like, they called them like Miami windows or jalousie windows, or like the metal crank windows. So what happens if that's in a wood building? I was looking through the backup and the guidelines. It talked about window replacement, but it didn't talk about necessarily if you're replacing a window that's currently a metal window that's already not a historic window, right? But it's within a contributing structure. It talked about replacing wood for wood. Vinyl wouldn't be used. But what happens when you're replacing a jalousie window with, I mean, where would that fall, I guess, from a planning standpoint?
Yes, and I can give that a shot. And we have our experts online as well. This document, one thing I like about it is all of the architectural types in Tarpon in the historic district, are in this document now. They were not previously. There's a whole lot more guidance on window replacement, substitute materials. So the first thing we'd look at is the period and style of the building, and then go from there. So I don't know if that helps, but.
So if it's a metal window, I mean, we're not going to require the applicant to replace it with another metal window in a wood building at that point. We would go towards a wood window, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds silly, but these are the things that have come up.
Windows was a big issue that we worked through on this document because, yeah.
And maybe the consultant could talk about the next couple ones for me as well. The demolition standards and then the economic hardship. So I was trying to understand the demolition standards, and I think I just need a little bit more of a understanding of how staff reviews that. Is that something you could share, or the consultant can share?
Yes, and I should say, and I should have said that Article 7 of the Heritage Preservation article of your Land Development Code, we're currently working on an update of that, and that will be coming back to you in order to make it consistent with this and to really work well with this. It needs some minor updates.
Okay.
So that demolition and economic hardship section, I mean, there's guidelines, there are guidelines here about demolition and the approach to it and that, but the
Right.
requirements and documentation are in the code.
Okay.
That will be coming back in the future.
Okay, so I mean, for me, economic hardship, I don't know how to define that. And I know that being on the board in the past, that was a struggle that we had as well. So
I can make a note of that for our
if that could
update.
be clarified, and I think it talked about that the applicant can appeal to the planning and zoning department, and then the city could set a meeting, but it doesn't say necessarily who the meeting is going to be with. Is it going to be with the Heritage Preservation Board, the Board of Commission, the staff, or who it would be? So I think those are some important things to talk about from a demolition standard and the economic hardship. One of the things I thought about is the driveways, and it talked about a single width car versus a double width car. A lot of these properties are pretty tight properties to begin with. And I know in the historic sense that if they're Model Ts that were driven, or you had a small car, that there's only one car in the driveway. But let's say you have teenagers and you have maybe 3 or 4 cars. Now you're forced to park out in the street and you don't have a double width driveway. The guidelines don't allow for a double width driveway to be added, is what my understanding was. Is there any allowance for that if it's on the side of the house, or if it's on the back side of the house, or if it's in the front of the house, if there's space to do an expansion if it's needed? Is there any opportunity for that? Does that come to mind at all?
I'm not, we don't really have a measurement restriction on driveway width in here. The driveways, and like you say, a lot of these are on some close properties. Some of them are in the transect zone, which does have a pretty strict standard on driveway width. Some of this is working with alleys as opposed to the street. Basically, they're just looking at the driveway in the context of the property and the building. It does provide guidance on circular driveways, that there be separate parking out of the way so that we're not always parked in front of a
Not blocking
contributing
in front of the building,
structure.
right?
Those sorts of things are in these as guidelines, but there's no strict requirement on the widths.
Okay.
So each case is taken by itself.
Okay, maybe I misread that, so thank you. A couple other items I have is, was there any additional contributing buildings added to the district when they did the review? Obviously, it's just 30 or 20 something years later. Do you know if the increase, or if any buildings, if we increased in historic buildings, or contributing or non-contributing?
No, we haven't. The last survey was done in 2009. It's been a little over 10 years. And I believe, just being staff to this program currently, I would like to seek another state grant for an updated survey to look at the district again, and anything that you all want to provide guidance, and the Heritage Preservation Board would like to provide guidance on what you want to do with the survey. We could go after a grant in the future to update that, because Department of State in our certified local government program, they recommend a 10 to 15 year, period. You should start to update your survey and look at that again. So,
For the record, can you explain the difference between contributing and historic contributing and historic non-contributing structures?
Historic non-contributing is something that's been altered to the extent where it's not considered contributing anymore, but the original building is older. It was contributing at some point, but there's so much alteration that it's considered non-contributing.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, this is my last one. There's a lot of historic buildings and houses around Tarpon Springs that are outside the historic district. Is there an opportunity for the homeowner to come, or a property owner to come to the city and say, we would like to voluntarily have our house added to the historic district? All the historic district I know it's not really a straight line, or it's a kind of it's a puzzle piece ultimately. Can can they be outside of the district, non-contiguous, and be added to the historic district? Because there's a lot of historic structures that are out there.
Mhm. I don't see why not. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I don't think there's any
I think it would add value
rules against
to the neighborhoods, the surrounding neighborhoods with the historic structures. And obviously, there's been some discussions on the board about losing some historic structures in other neighborhoods. So I think that would be.
You have that designation process in your code. So I don't see why you can't designate.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea for the staff to look into, and the city manager, if we could follow up on that.
Can you all hear me? I was gonna, sorry, this is Sarah McLaughlin Hi, from JMT. Sorry, I just wanted to add a quick point to that. It is pretty unusual to have a non-contiguous property as part of a historic district. The historic district is created with a specific period of significance and areas of significance. So there's a certain reason the boundaries were drawn the way they were. It can be added if the case can be made for a property or two, but usually if it's like on the other side of town, or if it's 4 blocks or 5 blocks away, chances are it's not going to get added to the district, but it can be individually. If you want it on the National Register, it could be, potentially listed on the National Register, or it could be a local register property as well. So there are other options other than just adding it to the existing district.
So there's a local register, like, I don't think we have a local registry ourselves. It's just a historic district, right?
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, I know you were here in Tarpon, I believe, a few months, or gosh, was that early?
It was like a year ago. So long ago.
So, I mean, we do have a lot of historic buildings outside of the district, north, west, east, and maybe south. But I think there's an opportunity to refine that a little bit on our end. Maybe we look at some historic designations outside of the district. I don't know what that would look like, but I would lean on staff to provide some opportunities for us. So thank you.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Thanks, Mayor. Pat, I don't think I've ever seen you so excited to present an item at this commission, or to the commission. So I think part of that probably has to do with you've been working on this for over a year. So I want to congratulate you on that. I do see in the backup where the first time we had a workshop was February 3rd, 2020. So it literally has been over a year. And I'll tell you that the first time I had experience with the code, or not the code, but the review guidelines being a little antiquated, is several years ago. We had at least 2 applications that I can think of where somebody went before the board, and the board did their job. The Heritage Preservation Board did their job within the limitations that they had with the existing guidelines. And the 2 of the applicants that I can think of, both are different applications, both appealed to the board, the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners granted the appeal because to the Board of Commissioners, it seemed like a pretty common sense thing. And, in hindsight, I can certainly appreciate and understand the Heritage Preservation Board's, not confusion, but they just felt like misdirected. And there was a lot of discomfort on that board when things like that would happen. So going back 5 or 6 years about when that time frame was to present, it feels good to have a nice, concise, clean, updated guideline that residents can cite, new residents can cite, and to me, in reviewing it, it seems kind of like smart code-ish, which I like because it makes it easy for people to understand and read and reference and make their decisions based on that. Vice Mayor brought up the windows, which I was going to bring up as well, and to your credit, there's not a simple response depending on the application, depending on the structure, et cetera. But that said, I do think that we have taken some serious steps in the right direction with this. And it looks absolutely fantastic. As I sit here and scroll through it, you've covered basically from start to finish in the, not only the, our local district, but also the national historic boundary. So I'm exceptionally pleased with it. And I'm sorry that it took this long to current and past board members of the Heritage Preservation Board. But now we have a new concise document and I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Donovan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I want to thank you, staff, current former members of the HPB. I mean, everybody put so much work into this, and it really shows. It's an incredibly detailed document. I mean, we're looking at 300 pages of good stuff here. Just to highlight a couple things I really like about it, pages 11 to 12, that's a great timeline that correlates, different designs to their dates. I thought that was really interesting. As somebody with no real knowledge of, different housing types, I thought that was really interesting. Same thing with their different classifications. I think saying here's our best version, here's a good alternative, and then here's what's not acceptable. I think that's such a good way to classify it. And it does allow some leniency for residents. Also, Appendix A, I really liked how they discussed, the ability to have a pre-application conference. I think that's really beneficial for everybody so they can get, questions out of the way. My only real question after reviewing the document is in regards to roof shapes. On page 105, it goes into a little bit, more detail on the preferred roof shapes, and it says, here's an illustration of roof types common in the Tarpon Springs Historic District. And then to me, it looks like it lists almost every type of roof design that's pretty standard. So are there any limitations to people wanting to change the styles of their roof? So let's say if I live in the historic district and I have a gable roof, for insurance purposes, I need to get a new roof. I want to make it a hip roof. Since those are both common in the Tarpon Springs Historic District, is there any limitation on me from changing roof types?
And that would depend on the style of the building and whether.
Okay.
And yeah, Sarah can chime in if I need her, but and whether the new roof type is appropriate for that style.
Okay, so that would just be on a as it comes up basis.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like about the document is each style is really discussed and illustrated in detail. So down to windows and doors, so you can see what's appropriate for the different styles.
No, yeah, it's a fantastic document. I know you put a lot of work into it, so I appreciate you guys doing all that. I don't have any further questions. Thank you again.
Commissioner Tikiotis.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. McNeese, Ms. Laughlin, thank you very much. It's an excellent document compared to what we had. I know it took several years to go through. I've been through it in detail, and I've also reviewed all the emails that you had included at the back end, and it looks like most, not all, but most of the recommendations were incorporated into the document, which I very much appreciated. Many of those, some dated from one email in 2017, referenced an email in 2016, and we went all the way through 2020. I think May was the last one that we got. So I know that there was a lot of effort in continuing working, massaging the document to get it to where we are. I think that people are beginning to understand I'm a little bit of a process-oriented individual, and there's some things in the guidelines that very similar to my mention in the sign ordinance that I see that are missing, which are very traditional type of planning processes and things like that. So I'm going to kind of go through these things. And did you have the lead on this? I think you would have had the lead on this rather than Ms. Vincent, or was
yes.
Okay, thank you. So you'll know what, at least to the extent that you recall. In one of the emails, it said that this document, the design guidelines, was a link between the comprehensive plan and the ordinance, and I appreciate that very much so. The in the comprehensive plan, and also there's it's interesting. There's a reference in the ordinance as well concerning not violating archaeological aspect or site associated with the location of the home. But we've been asking, not we collectively, historically, from in the comp plan and previous historic preservation board have been asking for an archaeological survey. Is there any plan for doing that in the future?
The archaeological subject matter is dealt with in the code in Article 7. That is something I have just initiated working with some of the county experts and some of the state to see what we need to do with that whole section. We do have access to the Florida Master Site File, which is updated periodically. But we, as far as the city doing a survey, we don't have any current plans to engage a survey specifically for the city, but that I know of. But we would be coordinating with the state on the master site file for sure.
I think it's important. It's been requested. I'm not saying to do anything with this document, but at some point we need to deal with that. I know in the comprehensive plan, it lists a number of archaeological sites already, and I was a little surprised that some of those weren't picked up as part of the, we've got in here maintenance, section on maintenance. If we've got maintenance, I'm surprised we didn't have anything on archaeological sites, key archaeological sites within the city, just to have one stop location of being able to see where are these archaeological sites in comparison to the historic district and things that we should be cautious of. So let me just say, and I'll follow up with these with the city manager at some point.
Yeah, and just to finish that, I've had one conversation with the county historic preservation expert, and they do have a lot of plans for program plans coming up. So I will check with him on whether they might be planning a county survey and how that might coordinate with us.
The one thing that some time ago I asked for the number of applications that the P&Z board reviewed that recommended approval, and we voted against to see what the difference was between that. And the one thing that I saw that kind of stood out, that there wasn't really any training on the standards of review and how they applied to some of the key documents, such as in this particular case, historic preservation guidelines. Are there any plans for providing some training among the Historic Preservation Board for looking at the standards of review and looking at the guidelines and making sure that they understand what the standards are as compared to what the guidelines are?
Yes, and with this board, we've done quite a bit of coordinating with training. This past year, they had a training by the city attorney's office on their standards and all those, covering a lot of topics. Very good discussion. They have taken advantage of the state. The state's doing online training right now because of the pandemic. They would come to train the board in person, but they can't do that right now. So many of the members have taken the certified local government training. And with this new adoption, we're hoping to get some specific topics training and those sorts of things. This board's very interested in those.
I know a couple of emails, one mentioned tiny homes.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I saw that and I'm not sure how that fits in with any of this. I don't see it in the guidelines. And is that just an outlier at this point, considered as an outlier? Or is that something that we have to consider?
That would be something that we would first look at your land development code and your building code and figure out what those are and whether they're allowed, where, et cetera.
That's a separate matter altogether. That's a higher level outside. It's a citywide rather than just a historic district as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But new construction guidelines in here are very good with respect to scale and the context of the district, and I think would take care of any.
And what about the, I'm not sure who it was that, I think it was one of the Historic Preservation Board members made note of some of the grass being displaced with rocks and gravel. And there was some question of how that was going to be handled in the future in the historic district. Was there any finality to that, or is that something that is going to be handled on a case-by-case basis, or is that a code enforcement issue? I'm not sure.
That would be probably handled on a case-by-case basis. The Heritage Preservation Board really has purview over over historic landscaped areas.
Can somebody come in and take out some grass and landscaping and put rocks and gravel in its place without going to the Historic Preservation Board?
Well, if if it's a yard and they don't need a permit, generally, I suppose they can do that. If they're doing a driveway or a walkway or reconfiguring something in the front, or in some area that the board would review and would need a permit, then it would definitely go
Yeah,
to.
I thought that was discussed. I thought I read that in there that and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but wasn't that discussed in the guidelines that it's not to remove like the front lawns or the?
That's what I was getting at. It
Yeah.
is in the sense that there's some flexibility, but there is no finality on it. In other words, is that something that's desirable or is it frowned upon? And some of these things I'm bringing up is food for additional thought on the part of the commission, maybe looking at this a little further down the line. I know there's going to be updates to this. I don't want to object to anything or try and halt or delay anything that's going on here, but there's a tremendous amount of work that still needs to be done. One other thought in here is that in the standards of review, it refers to being consistent with the historic element of the comprehensive plan, which was last updated in 2007. And I know Ms. Vincent is in the process of updating everything over the next 18 months. But there's no reference to the comprehensive plan in the design guidelines. It is in the ordinance as far as a standard of review, but not in the guidelines themselves. And I'm going to say something about that in a minute along the line of what you were saying as far as what about this, what about that? And there's those things were brought up 14 years ago, and we still haven't gotten to them. Some of the things that you talked about. So if I can continue, and I appreciate what you said. Yeah, in the standards of review number 10, which is in the ordinance, which is included in the guidelines, it states that we comply with the comprehensive plan.
Yes,
that's the one thing I was going to.
The ordinance is provided as an appendix so that the people have everything in one document. So that's something new too that we didn't have.
Yeah, we didn't. It's not, the comp plan is not an appendix.
No, just the land development code.
Just in the ordinance that refers to the comp plan.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to get at. I know that our the historic element of the comprehensive plan is outdated. We're working on that, but there is still some very valid information in the comp plan. But I guess what I'm getting at is, was there ever any process of looking at the design guidelines and making sure that they comply with the comprehensive plan?
Well, the comprehensive plan basically sets out our program for the historic area. So the fact that we have guidelines and that's part of our whole historic program, that was considered something that was part of the required comprehensive plan.
I think that there's goals, objectives, and policies in the comp plan, and I'm not sure that all of them are addressed in the design guidelines, and that's all I'm saying. Obviously, this is a resolution, and I did not have time to actually go through each one, but I'm sure there's probably a disconnect in one or two of those. Getting back to the comprehensive plan in terms of the recommendations, and this was from an evaluation and appraisal report from 2007. The historic element was to basically evaluate expansion of the historic district to include the following areas: the Fruit Salad District, north to Spring Boulevard, south to Lime Street, east to Pineapple Street, west to Banana, Bass Streets, Grand Boulevard District, Grand Boulevard, Athens Street, Cross Street, Hope Street. And I would suspect maybe one or two of those were done, but not all of them. And,
Yes.
and I do know in terms of the historic designations, we have the National Register, we have the National Register, which is broken out into national importance, state importance, and local importance. So we could certainly create a local register for homes that are not necessarily in the district. I'll give you an example. On Lime Street, many of the things that I see from homeowners is that across the street, it's the historic district. On this side of the street, it's not the historic district, but it's a historic home. But it's just because there weren't enough historic homes on that side of the street for it to be included. Is that fair? Probably not. And so I think there ought to be some mechanism for a homeowner petitioning the city to, even though that's the line of demarcation, and perhaps in an ordinance at some point we could kind of state that we could actually look 200 feet away or so forth for historic homes that are outliers that should be included in the historic district, but because of this line that we've drawn are not. And that would be for some future effort. Lastly, there was one email that made reference to Greektown. And in 2014, we established the Greektown Cultural Historic District in Tarpon Springs. And just about a week ago, I was cornered by two people who actually lived down the street from me that they were more of complaints, but you can't complain. They were observations of some new homes being constructed that were, in their view, architecturally incompatible with what you see in Greektown, among the bungalows and so forth. And Mayor, I know you had concerns about the packing houses and making sure they're part of all of this as well. I don't think we've done that yet. We should do that. So I spoke to Mr. Powell with regard to the not the new building code, but at some point, we're going to have a workshop, and I think this is something that he had brought up concerning of restructuring the fee schedule for the building permits. And also there's some local amendments in the building code that he'd like to incorporate, and also some other aspects that he would like for us to consider. And I would like to see, as part of that effort, the building code has now reversed itself from what I've seen about 5 or 6 years ago to being a lot friendlier for historic buildings, which I think is good. And I think we ought to have some discussion on that as well. But the important thing is I would like to have some consideration or discussion in that workshop, maybe a part 1 and a part 2, where we would consider establishing some kind of design guidelines for the Greektown Cultural Historic District as well, so we don't wind up losing what we have. I mean, there is absolutely no protection of any of those homes down there, and a person can come. Now, there is one builder from Tarpon Springs. He does an excellent job of trying to match, even on a new home, with what's in the neighborhood. But there is one builder from outside of town that has not, and that's where the observations from these two individuals have come from. So I'd like for there to be some discussion, not as extensive as what we have for the historic district, but something that protects the neighborhood, especially if one street is all these vernacular style homes that we have, that we don't have any protection for it now. It doesn't have to be commercial or the sponge docks or anything like that, but certainly the Greektown neighborhood and some of the old homes. So, but we'll deal with that with the future. I think it's an excellent job. I'd like to see some additional connectivity between the comp plan and the design guidelines, and certainly some cross-reference to the two, so everyone understands they work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going to the public comments. Obviously, we don't have anybody here in the audience, but Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No.
Mr. Jump, do we have anybody online wishing to speak?
If anyone online would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do have a raised hand at this time.
Okay.
If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Panayotis Kuyas, 595 Peninsula Avenue. I just found out this historic area is called the Fruit Salad Bowl, locally known. Well, locally known to who? I mean, between that historic district that you guys got lined up, you got the Golden Crescent, you got Venice of the South, and now you got the fruit salad area. So stop trying to tie Tarpon Springs to a certain era and keep it timeless. Thank you.
Jeff, do you have anybody else online wishing to speak?
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. We need a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
And roll call.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
We are now going to miscellaneous item number 15, Building Development Department, Building Code, update and discussion. Mr. Powell?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Kevin Powell, Building Development Director. Just want to bring forward to you information that every 3 years, the building code is updated by the state. So to stay in conformance with the state guidelines, we're going to be bringing an ordinance back to you on the 23rd for first reading, talking about the new building code. We're going from the 2017 6th edition to the 2020 7th edition. Not a lot of changes in the code. There are some, but it's mandated by the state that we have to adopt it to stay in compliance. So we'll be bringing that forward to you. Also, I'm going to go ahead and bring the update for the fire prevention code. That also changes every 3 years. So they're going to the 7th edition of the Florida Fire Prevention Code. So Florida has its own fire code, which is pulled from the NFPA. As Commissioner Vaticiotis spoke a little bit about for a future workshop. So in the building code in Chapter 1, there are some areas that we can address local amendments to the Florida Building Code, mainly looking at some of the smaller projects that we can exempt from permitting. So, just things that we can look at. So, I'm gonna bring things to you, what I feel that, minor repairs of things on properties that we can exempt from permitting, so homeowners allowed to maintain their property. Also, as Commissioner Vaticiotis spoke, address the fee schedule a little bit. It has not been updated since 2003. I think it's time that we at least look at it and make some considerations for things. I was listening with the sustainability folks earlier today, and everything coming out about incentives for building green or something. Maybe we adjust a fee around that, but that's a topic that we need to discuss. So that's what I just wanted to bring forward tonight on the building code update that we're going to be bringing back to you for the first reading, and then start looking at coming up with a workshop for the Chapter 1 and look at readdressing the fee schedule. Any questions?
Mr. Powell, thank you for taking the time discussing that proposed building code with me in the office. When's the deadline on that? How soon you have to have all that?
Well, for the Chapter 1 amendments, there's no deadline. That's just for us to do. We can go ahead and make those amendments, file that with the state. The Florida Building Commission will go ahead and do an amendment. A local amendment is what will end up happening. So there's no deadline to it. I think it's something that we really need to spend some time on and make right for our community.
Okay. So we're going to meet the deadline, whatever that is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, since we're not going to, since you recommended to have a workshop, which I'm okay with that, I just want to as I stated in our discussion, my philosophy is projects that, small projects that are not affecting the structure and there's not safety concern, I don't think we should be pulling permits.
There will be some caveat to that. I mean, there are some things that would happen that would be non-structural that would still need to be permitted because there's still the energy code you still have to follow. We're talking minor roof repairs. We're talking maybe a certain type of fence, something along those lines. I just want to sit down and kind of compile a list, bring it to you and say, this is what we're seeing within our community. This is what I feel that we should be able to exempt. Right now, nothing is written down as to what do I or don't need a permit for. So if somebody calls, do I need a permit? Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Even though it's something very small that you want to say no to, I don't have it written down anywhere that we can do that.
Okay. Well, since not a time limit, I'm sure Mr. Licouris will be kind of tight with the schedule, so.
Yeah, we can.
If you provide us some, working material so we can work with that.
Yep.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Carr?
I have no further questions from our conversations that we had on the phone.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Thanks. I also had an opportunity to catch up with Mr. Powell on a project and discuss this with some detail. Kevin, just for clarity, you're talking about doing the amendment that gives us locally some flexibility within what's permanent and what's not, and also the fee structure in the same workshop?
We can do it in the same workshop or we can split them up.
I think we should do it in the same workshop.
Okay.
I mean, if that's
I'm
okay
fine with
you.
that because I'm trying to streamline the fee schedule. So,
right.
We know what a permit costs, not I've got to add this line with this and let me turn the page over here. Oh yeah, I got to add this in there too.
No, that would be my preference. And obviously, as the mayor said, you'll give us some things to think about in advance of that meeting.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
Just looking forward to the work session. Thanks again for reaching out in advance.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ticiotis?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Powell, just timing wise, we talked about that a little bit, that you're comfortable with your fee schedule and the local amendments, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months from now.
Whenever we can get it put on a workshop, I'm ready.
Okay.
So, if it's in the next month, that's fine.
Well, there's other workshops. That
I know there's a
think
lot
people are
going
waiting
on,
for,
so
yeah.
yes, I'm flexible, and it's just not something that has to be done right now.
Right.
This
right.
is something that we can work on. We can address our local issues and address those here before we send it off to the building commission.
Now, the ordinance that we're going to be approving, we're going to be adopting this code and future codes by reference. Is that correct?
We're going to just adopt this code. I spoke with Attorney Trask, and I understand his point of if we say current code, somebody can say, well, it was current at some other point in time.
So we're going to do it by the
So we're going to
specific
do it
edition.
by the 2020
Okay.
building code.
Yeah, that's good.
So then when we come back in the 3 years, it's just going to change it to the 2023.
Arnie. Would we have to redo the local amendments with each edition?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item? No one's here, so Ms. Jacobs, any emails?
No email.
Mr. Jump, anyone on Zoom wishing to speak?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do have a raised hand. I'll allow them in. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Panayotis Koulias, 595 Peninsula Avenue. Now with the building code being brought up, I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to talk about all the buildings and houses that were being built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and who knows currently, that were in violation of building code in Florida, including my house that I currently stay at. That's why a lot of these first-story houses, their flood insurance is skyrocketing out the roof because they're in violation. They were built under the water level that they were supposed to. A lot of backdoor dealing going on back then, and it made our FEMA rating shoot down, as well as our community rating throughout the years. We're not in too good standing, so I want to make sure we have flexibility that I heard one of the commissioners talk about. it's not in violation with codes and on a Florida level, so on a state level. And it's going to take some time for us to build our community rating back up, but we will get there. But a lot of backdoor dealing that was going on during that time period, like I mentioned, is causing houses and families to suffer pain for insurance on their one-story houses that were being built against code. So over time, we're going to fix all that. And there has been inspections at houses before under the Mastraccio order that they went to houses and they saw they were still in violation and they wrote off they weren't. I don't need to say any names at this point, but moving forward, we're going to have a building code that works for the citizens and not the good old boy network. Thank you.
Jim, do you have anybody else wishing to speak?
And we do not have anybody else in attendance at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Licouris, I believe you got direction on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Well, that concludes the regular session agenda, and we go to the staff comments. Major Young?
No comments.
Thank you. Mr. Trask?
No comments, Mayor.
Mr. Licouris?
Just to note some dates coming up. March 4th, we do have a work session. They're on items that the clerk's office and the city attorney's worked on. Irene, will you get them? I know it has to do with sister city.
Yeah, the procedures for the sister cities, the board rules, and the other board rules for the consistency, such as absences and things like that. Terms.
And the BOC rules and procedures.
Yep, those three.
So that's coming up on Thursday, March 4th. Also, we've got Tuesday, April 6th reserved for another work session. I'll have a list for you. Hopefully, I'm not sure. A lot's going to depend how much we get through in the work session on the 4th, depending on the conversation. I don't know. There's no way to know. But probably the 9th, we would to see where we are in there, if we need to continue that, because that's something very important. We've been working on a long time. I'll have the other subjects that this board can decide on the topic for the work session on April 6th. So just ahead of time, mark those 2 days, March 4th and April 6th. Hopefully we get a lot of that finished, because we need the city attorney. That's why it's a Thursday, March 4th meeting. So hopefully we can get it through a lot of that meeting. And again, I'll get to you the list of the other work sessions for you to decide what you want to have, work session or town hall meeting, whichever one you pick for that April 6th meeting.
What's we're going to cover on April 6th?
That's to be determined.
That's what is going to be determined by the board.
Okay. That's it, Mr. Licouris?
Yes, I just wanted you to put
Okay.
those dates down.
Ms. Jacobs?
I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Carr?
Yeah, a couple comments. I have a quick one. As a board, we've been accused of doing evil things, receiving bribery, and other aspects. And one individual who's coming up and accusing us of this and spreading false information through emails throughout the city to the residents, through email list, and so on, is a chairman of our our Board of Adjustment. And as a reminder to the board that these individuals serve at the pleasure of the commission. And to me, we all have the freedom of speech, which I welcome to anybody. But when you have a significant amount of false information that's being spread and rumors being spread about commissioners, about elected officials, about being accused of taking money to approve projects, being called evil, to me, that's not something that I take lightly, and accusing my character overall. This is a significant amount of false information. So what I wanted to ask is if there's any desire of the board to remove this individual from the Board of Adjustment. I did reach out to the city attorney.
Mm-hmm.
He said this is the time to bring it up. And if there was a desire, then we would make some type of, I forgot exactly how it's phrased, Tom.
Agenda item.
an agenda item at the next meeting, right?
To take board action on the direction given here or the consensus given here.
Okay.
And just as some additional background, that board has a code provision that allows board members to be removed without cause by the commission. So you wouldn't have to get to a point where you actually made a decision as to the reasons why. You don't have to give a reason, but because you can do it without cause.
Well, really, you don't need to have a consensus. You can actually put anything you want on the agenda. So you can actually request that to be on the agenda, any agenda,
I understand that. I just,
you know.
I'm
And
sorry,
then we'll
what'd you say,
discuss that
Mayor?
and vote on it.
Mayor, I didn't hear you. What did you say?
Well, what I said is, he really doesn't have to have consensus from us or any, he can actually put any item on the agenda if he wants, as a commissioner.
Thank you.
You can do that.
yeah, the city manager, or I'm sorry, the city attorney just said this is the appropriate way to go. So I'm happy to request that on the next agenda. I think it would be nice to know some at least idea which way we would be going, but that's fine. I'll request that on this the next meeting, city manager.
Thank you. Anything else?
Congratulations to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot to celebrate and championship Tampa Bay over this past year. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Terrapini.
Thanks, Mayor. Vice Mayor, I'll just let you know that I share in some of your concerns, and I have asked, or not asked, but as a former board member, I have asked somebody to leave the Board of Adjustment before. In addition to that, I saw an email that we lost a member of the community, one of the Kokolaxes, so I just want to keep their family in our thoughts and prayers. And other than that, I don't have any other announcements.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan.
You Tampa Bay Buccaneers are Super Bowl champions. They're the best team alive. They're going to be remembered for forever. Who knows? You got budget season coming up. Rumor has it, Tom Brady statue outside of City Hall. That might be something we discuss. I'm not being serious for those at home that are going to get upset at me for suggesting that. But I am very happy with them. Congratulations to them. That's awesome stuff.
Thank you. Commissioner Vaticius.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got two items. One, I've asked the city manager to schedule a discussion agenda item for March 23rd at the regular commission meeting on the Manatee Village Shopping Plaza. There's a whole lot of discussion. I don't want to call it misinformation. It's just a lack of information, and people are filling in the blanks as far as what rumors of things going on, some X number of apartments that are being planned for it and so forth. So and I had a couple of conversations with former mayors actually and other commissioners as far as the former Walmart property. And the one comment that I got from one former mayor was the fact that after the Walmart issue, if you will, there could have been a little bit of a more proactive approach to actually having some town meetings and things as far as what the residents would want to see on there. And he felt that perhaps that could have alleviated a lot of things as far as marketing for that type of a project, the city marketing for that type of a project, rather than letting it develop and evolve as it did. So I took his comment seriously. I thought it was excellent. So I'd like to pursue something like that on Manatee Village, where we have a brief presentation by the planning director or whoever she would like to see as far as the density, what can be built on that location, what the number of apartments, if that's the way it goes, it could go on there, and also whether there's been any kind of activity on that site for redeveloping it. Also, if there is some additional discussion on the part of the commission and the residents all share their views with us, and there's some understanding on our part, perhaps there could be some economic development effort in that regard to market that type of project to come to Tarpon Springs. I mean, not unlike that we had up in Pasco with the Moffitt Cancer Center and the Santander, and things aren't going to come to us unless we actively market something to come to us. And I think this would be one location for that to happen. My understanding, it was just recently, it just changed ownership. I don't know anything about that. I'm not sure where there was a whole lot of discussion as far as density increases on that site, and it may have been under the previous owner. So I don't know what the current status of it is, but anything that could be shared publicly would be certainly helpful and hopefully alleviate anything that a repeat of what we just went through with the former Walmart site. So that's, I've asked for that to be scheduled on March 23rd, and I'll work with the city manager. And if you have some any ideas, please share those with him as well, as far as the type of information that could be presented at that time on this location. The second item is the March is here. We were promised a progress report from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as far as how much money they're going to have to do the dredging from the south end of the lighthouse the south end all the way out to the sea buoy. And I'd like to hear what that is. So either March 9th or March 23rd, either one of those meetings, I would like to have an update to see where we are on that, find out how much money the Army Corps has. The young lady that spoke to us said that she was going to be looking at leftover funds to be able to accommodate that dredging, and it wouldn't take any time at all to be able to do it. So I'd like to find out where we are on that and keep things moving in that regard. Also to find out where we are. They should have opened the bids by now and identified a potential contractor by now for the federal channel from the lighthouse all the way to the turning basin. And then also, if there's any new information on the extended turning basin. And I guess, City Manager LaCourse, have you heard anything new from that?
No, I haven't.
So, okay, so we're ready for some additional information, and
Yes.
yeah, and if there's something else that comes up before that Mr. Robertson would like to share, that's perfectly fine. But if we could invite the Army Corps down here, if they can't make it, I still think we need to know what they're doing. They could do it by Zoom if they'd like, rather than being down here personal. But I think we need to just keep moving on this thing. And they told us March. It is March in another 3 weeks. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I would like to inform our residents that under the advice of House Speaker Chris Rawls, we submitted 2 applications for state funding. One application was for the Anglo River Extended Turn Basin. The amount of $724,000. And the second application we submitted was for the sponge ducts flooding on Dodecanus Boulevard to build a stormwater vault in the amount of $1.7 million. Representative Chris Latvala and Senator Hooper are sponsoring both requests, and I'd like to thank them in public for their support and their love to Tarpon Springs. Also, my condolences to Kokolakis family in passing of John Kokolakis. Mr. Kokolakis contributed a lot to the Greek American Society and our local community here. He was the president of the Pan-Hellenic Federation of Florida. Mr. John Kokolakis was my personal friend, and he'll be greatly missed. So that, I also like to congratulate the Tampa Bay Bucks. Man, I was all proud. That's all I have with that. The meeting's adjourned at 10:05 p.m.
Go Rays.